The head chef begins by questioning Woojin about what he had done this time. Woojin adopts a more serious tone, looks his boss in the eyes, and presents his dish, a ratatouille. His boss gets irritated by the fact that Woojin used yuzu instead of tomatoes in the ratatouille, but Woojin insists that he believes ratatouille pairs better with yuzu. After that, the chef tries to calm himself by taking a deep breath. Then he tells Woojin to stop making strange things in the kitchen and go back to chopping vegetables, as his knife skills were unparalleled. He finishes by telling Woojin to try to do better next time. Right after, he asks who will be next for evaluation, but suddenly, one of the employees starts yelling at the evaluator, calling him an insolent fool. He says that the evaluator should not dare to speak to the celestial demon in such a way and should bow his head and beg for forgiveness. Woojin reflects that, in his past, his servants would intervene like this and that his past culinary skills have no use in this world. It is revealed that in Woojin's past life, he was the celestial demon king who had conquered multiple planes. However, Woojin says that conquering the central plains was never his true interest. Woojin had prepared a dish of fried, spicy peppers. He made the dish as a way to thank the servant and reveals that he conquered the plains because they were interfering with his dream. The elders become uneasy at the sight of yet another bizarre dish from the celestial demon. Then it is revealed that Woojin's dream was to become the greatest chef in the Central Plains. Woojin was born in 2011, shortly after his parents died in a gate accident. The protagonist was taken in by his friend's parents, who, despite having their own child, treated him as part of the family. Not long after, his adoptive father also died in an accident related to the gates. This event drastically affected Woojin at the time, leading him to recall memories of his past life. In the kitchen, Woojin reflects that something is wrong, remembering that he had finally escaped the world of martial arts to dedicate himself to cooking. Woojin reflects that now he finally has his chance as he prepares another dish. But many people in this world do not like Woojin's food. Woojin is confused as he recalls that the elders of his past life adored his cooking. One of them even fainted. Now the protagonist is cooking sausages with vegetables. His adoptive brother, Shionho, arrives back home. Shionho notices a different smell upon entering. Then, Shionho sees Woojin savoring the food he had just finished cooking. Suspicious, Shionho asks if Woojin was the one who made that dish. Woojin responds that he was and asks if Shionho would like to take a bite. Still hesitant, Shionho decides to take a bite, thinking that Woojin might have improved in cooking. Shionho was starving at the time, so he figured that anything would taste good, even Woojin's food. But as soon as he puts it in his mouth, he spits everything out. He thinks that if he had chewed even once, he would have died. He quickly runs to drink water, believing that the food was made with spoiled vegetables. Shionho looks to the side, alarmed. He notices a pack of cherries thrown on the table. Then he asks Woojin if he had used cherries in the dish. Woojin explains that he used cherries instead of sugar because they add a tart and refreshing flavor that sugar does not provide. Shionho says he understands and that he is going to take a shower, also telling Woojin to finish eating the rest of the food. Woojin reflects that it has been almost a year since his reincarnation and that, since then, he has dedicated his life to cooking, yet his food is disapproved of by the people of this land. He begins thinking of ways to improve his cooking so that they will accept his food. But when he tastes his meal again, he truly finds it delicious. While showering, Shionho is frustrated that Woojin used cherries in that dish, thinking that he must be crazy. He questions how it could taste so awful and wonders why Woojin insists on cooking like this. A bit thoughtful, Shionho reflects that Woojin's true talent is not in cooking. He recalls the night their parents were killed by a monster, when Woojin effortlessly defeated it. He realizes that Woojin must have awakened that day along with him, but Woojin was incomparably stronger than Shionho. Shionho comes to the conclusion that Woojin has reached S rank. He thinks that if Woojin became a hunter, he would become a legend and that they could hunt together to avenge their father. Suddenly, a mysterious girl appears, describing Woojin's dish. She says that this dish is the second most delicious thing she has ever seen. Woojin is surprised that it is not the first. The girl continues describing it. It was a simple dish of meat with vegetables and some kind of sauce. She says that the secret to elevating the dish to that level should be in the sauce. Woojin reflects that she understands cooking, and the girl asks if she can know the name of the dish. Woojin responds that the name of the dish is cherry soya, and the girl concludes that what defines the dish's flavor is either the cherry or the soy. As the girl eats, Woojin asks who she is. Then, the girl reveals herself to be the secret spirit of culinary arts. She says that spirits make contracts with humans to improve their skills, and that she is a resident of the Cooking Grimoire dungeon. She was born into that world to clarify that the world's cuisine was inferior, and that people's palates were ignorant. She claims to possess countless recipes that do not exist in that world, and that the protagonist could learn all of them, and that he could complete the ultimate flavor, which no one had discovered yet. The spirit says that she exists solely to achieve the final flavor. She continues by saying that she has met many chefs, but none were skilled enough to make a contract. But she adds that she thought that way until this very moment. Still confused, the protagonist asks what she is trying to say. The spirit argues that after tasting the protagonist's dish, she realized that he would be capable of completing the supreme dish, and then she asks Woojin if they would form a contract. But suddenly, the protagonist realizes that the spirit was tied to some item that Shinho had looted, meaning the spirit should belong to Shinho. However, the spirit girl argues that she has not made a contract with anyone yet. Woojin then says that the offer sounds good to him, but there is a catch. Suddenly, a light from the sky illuminates the place, and thus the contract was made. A smart panel appears in the protagonist's vision, stating that he has become the dungeon chef class. The protagonist is confused by so much information being thrown at him so quickly. The spirit girl says that they finally have a contract and that he can check the journal for more information. Woojin notices that the program states he is level 1 and has no access to the recipes yet, which leaves him outraged as he was the one who mastered the martial arts of the world. The girl panics, explaining to the protagonist that the level displayed there was not his true level and did not mean he was inexperienced. In reality, it showed the level of his culinary grimoire and his proficiency. The spirit says that Woojin can level up through missions and recipes from the grimoire, but he cannot access them because he is not a hunter. The girl informs him that the ingredients for the dishes are found in dungeons, but he does not have permission to access them. Woojin understands the situation and asks if he will gain access to the recipes if he becomes a hunter. The spirit girl confirms, saying that once he passes the tutorial tower and becomes a hunter, he will gain access to the grimoire's missions and recipes. Woojin remembers that his brother Shinho said the tutorial tower opens every 3 months. He looks at his smartphone and seems to understand something. Resentful, Woojin's boss thinks he might have been a bit harsh on him, but concludes that he had to say what he did. Reflecting on Woojin, the boss says that he is perfect in everything in the kitchen, except for the ingredients he uses, and that he single-handedly handles the workload of 3 people. A message from Woojin arrives on the boss's phone. He assumes the contact must be about their confrontation the previous day and feels bad. But in reality, the message states that he is resigning from his job in the kitchen. Mysterious towers had appeared worldwide after the gate incident, and it was discovered that those who completed the towers could use mana. The interiors of the towers change shape every time someone enters, and numerous trials suddenly began. Only those who defeat the monsters and traps within the towers can use mana. Despite the dangerous conditions, the number of tower challengers continues to grow, attracting those blinded by wealth, fame, and those who spend fortunes in the tutorial towers. The starting point of the towers was filled with desires and pleas. A hunter is caught off guard as a green slime attacks him. He swiftly dodges the slime's attack, and then advances, striking the monster's core. With that, the slime explodes, being defeated. After much effort, the slime dropped only slime fluids and its core. The hunter is furious for working so hard to kill 4 slimes and not having a single one drop a weapon. Still frustrated, the hunter says that all he ever gets is useless slime fluid and that he has already spent 20 million just on the tutorial tower. He lies on the ground, saying that he needs to rest for an hour to recharge his strength. Still on the ground, he thinks that, given the hard work he has done so far, he actually deserves to rest for 2 hours. Surprised, he notices that more people have arrived at the tower. He dismisses the newcomers, calling them strange and mocking them for entering the tower without even wearing leather armor. The ones who had entered the tower were Woojin, the protagonist of the story, along with his culinary spirit. Woojin notices that he was teleported in the blink of an eye and comments that this method is far more convenient than the ones used in the Central Plains. The spirit girl remarks that Woojin's outfit looks very different from those around him. The protagonist recalls that it has been half a year since he regained his memories and that he thought he had adapted well enough to this society. Woojin curiously looks around, observing the attire of the other hunters. Suddenly, one of the hunters warns Woojin that a monster is approaching and tells him to hurry before someone else steals it from him. The slime continues approaching the protagonist at a fast pace, but he does not seem concerned, while the other hunter shouts for him to be careful. With a single strike, he eliminates the slime and reflects that he should have brought armor, realizing he needs to be careful because the road ahead is long. The grimoire screen opens, stating that ingredients can be registered in the grimoire and asking if Woojin would like to register them. Woojin is confused by what he just read and assumes that the ingredients in question must be from the slime he just eliminated. Suddenly, 3 hunters shout, calling Woojin a bastard and intimidating him, warning him not to loot the slime's items. But Woojin is so distracted by his new culinary system that he does not even hear them speaking. 2 other men tell the protagonist not to act tough, claiming that they have faced much harder battles. The spirit girl becomes nervous, saying that they are attracting unwanted attention and telling Woojin to drop the slime's items. Woojin realizes the situation is getting awkward and picks up a sword that was lying on the ground. As he readies his stance, Woojin reflects that, before he arrived in the Central Plains, that place was a mess. In a fighting position, he states that this will be a good opportunity for him to climb the tower. The three hunters immediately take their stances and remain alert. One of them comments that it looks like Woojin wants to fight. He continues, saying that if they get injured, they can receive treatment outside, but their chances of climbing the tower will decrease. One of the hunters suggests retreating since they are unarmed, but their leader disagrees and decides to charge at Woojin. They tell Woojin that just because he has a sword does not make him special. He is still surrounded by all three of them. The protagonist remains unfazed in front of the hunters. Woojin thinks that, at the very least, these guys understand military combat strategy. Suddenly, one of the hunters attacks Woojin from behind using a wooden club, but with just one strike from his sword's hilt. Woojin knocks him down and disarms him. Frustrated, another hunter lunges at Woojin. Without much effort, Woojin evades his attack. The protagonist then uses the hunter's own weapon against him, sending him flying. Terrified, the last hunter freezes as Woojin approaches him. Woojin hurls a wooden club at the hunter, ending the fight with a single blow. The spirit girl is astonished by the protagonist's movements. Woojin remarks that if they were in the Central Plains, he would have broken the hunters' necks on the spot. With that, he continues on, reflecting that he must follow the laws of this world. Moving forward, Woojin asks the girl if only he can see the grimoire screen. The girl replies that all contractors can see each other's grimoires. Woojin asks if he can register ingredients in the grimoire, and the girl responds that he can, even if he is not an official hunter. Without hesitation, Woojin quickly clicks yes on the open pop-up. The protagonist is surprised by the screen that appears, stating that the ingredient slime fluid has been registered. He assumes that all the items he had previously looted were also registered there, so he decides to check them one by one. He arrives at a screen showing the name of a recipe called slime pudding along with its ingredients, but he does not have permission to view it. The girl explains once again that he cannot see the recipe yet. She frantically continues, insisting that it is not the grimoire's fault. It is because he is not yet a hunter. The girl recalls that the grimoire has passed through many ignorant people who never understood its true value. She declares that in thousands of years, no one like Woojin has ever been ready for the grimoire and decides that she cannot let him go. Before the protagonist could finish his sentence, the girl screams into his ear, saying that she accepts everything except canceling the contract. Woojin is confused as the girl cries, begging him not to cancel the contract. The protagonist explains that he was only asking if he could create a new dish that wasn't in the recipe. Woojin says that he will create a new dish, and that he sees no sense in blindly following someone else's method. Still terrified, the girl asks if that was really what he meant, and if he wasn't planning to cancel the contract, but Woojin says that he never even considered it. The girl thought Woojin was upset about not having access, but he tells her that he just isn't used to it, and has no complaints. The girl says that she has seen many people over the years, but Woojin is the first to say he will cook without a recipe. Moving forward, the protagonist says that he will only know by trying. Woojin looks back, sensing a presence. He concludes that someone is following them and keeps moving forward. In the shadows, the man pursuing them seems to have noticed something. The man is surprised to see a grimoire spirit and wonders what a contractor would be doing in a tutorial tower. The protagonist opens a jar of slime fluid and dips his finger into it. Suddenly, he puts his finger in his mouth, tasting the slime, while the girl yells at him not to eat that. Panicking, she says that slimes have poison, not fatal, but enough to cause terrible stomach pain. Woojin ignores her and keeps chewing. The protagonist says he thought it would have a sweet taste and become cloying quickly, but instead it is bitter with a well-balanced spicy flavor. The girl wonders how he is fine after eating something poisonous, while Woojin remarks that it would be great for desserts or seasoning meat. Still shocked, the girl says that as long as he isn't in pain, it's fine, and then asks what dish she plans to make. Woojin reflects that slime fluid has fast-acting poison, so the protagonist decides to apply yang energy to his hands to remove the poison from the ingredient. Then he releases yin energy to absorb the heat, and so the slime ingredient solidifies. The protagonist decides to taste a bit of what he has made. With that, Woojin decides what he will cook and reveals that he has chosen to make a yang gang. As several slimes approach them, Woojin says he will need plenty of ingredients. Later, in the same corridor, the man who had been pursuing them passes by, saying that something is wrong because there are too many weapons dropped on the ground. He picks up one of the spears and notes that its condition is poor, but it is still a good weapon. The man reflects that the protagonist and the spirit girl left behind all that equipment and only took the slime drops. He concludes that, given the number of weapons scattered around, they must have only been interested in the items dropped by the slimes. But even so, he does not understand why. He keeps thinking that slime drops are poisonous, and there would be only one reason to collect them in the tutorial tower. He assumes that the tutorial tower is hiding some unknown piece of the puzzle. The man panics, saying that the future has already changed, and so he begins running in search of Woojin. He reflects that this grimoire contractor is a complete stranger and that he should have acted faster. After running for so long, he reaches a room. Still panting after arriving there, he spots Woojin and his grimoire spirit. Woojin notices that the man has entered the room and assumes that he was the one following him. As the two stare at each other, Woojin seems to already understand the situation. Woojin assumes that the man is after his grimoire spirit. The protagonist is curious about how the spirit is appearing before that man. The mysterious man continues to stare at Woojin with a suspicious gaze. He concludes that Woojin must have eliminated all the slimes in that room, given the items scattered across the floor. The man says he does not know which grimoire spirit is in Woojin's possession, but his relaxed attitude makes sense. He sees no logic in a low-level hunter having a legendary grimoire spirit with him, and that only a certain group of people would be capable of giving a grimoire to a beginner hunter. The man assumes that Woojin is acting with that particular group and senses Woojin's aura from afar. Then, the man decides to surrender, saying that he is only being cautious because someone appeared out of nowhere. He continues by saying that he does not want to fight but questions why he does not recognize this man, while also admitting that Woojin is extraordinary and could ruin his plans. Now that man has the goal of discovering why the protagonist is collecting slime items. Woojin relaxes and says that violence among the people of the tower is prohibited, but this rule is very superficial. Suddenly, the protagonist begins walking toward the mysterious man, making the man go on high alert, unsure of what Woojin intends to do. He prepares for combat and says he is certain that Woojin is with that particular group. But as Woojin gets closer to the man, he simply greets him and states his name. The mysterious man is surprised to see that Woojin has adopted a friendly attitude. The two exchange greetings, and the man introduces himself as Jo Seong-jun. Acting oblivious, the man asks Woojin if he saw what had happened earlier. The man explains that he found it strange to see slime equipment scattered throughout the labyrinth. He continues saying that people normally hunt slimes in the tutorial for their equipment drops, so he found it odd that someone would eliminate slimes without collecting the items. Woojin easily admits that he was the one who defeated all the slimes. The man is surprised that Woojin confessed so readily and begins reconsidering whether he is really part of the group he suspected. He states that the group in question is extremely secretive about their identities and would not act so openly, so the man assumes that Woojin is not with that group, but he still does not understand his objective. Still cautious, the man tells Woojin that his feat was impressive. He adds that they both have things to do and that he will continue on his way. The man reflects that Woojin is definitely not with the people he was expecting, but it is still strange that he is collecting slime items. Seong-jun considers that the hidden piece of the tutorial tower will be revealed in 20 years and wonders if Woojin also knows about it. He begins to suspect that he might know Woojin's origin. 30 years into the future, the world was destroyed. After the world's destruction, Seong-jun received a miracle called regression. He was able to return to the world 30 years in the past thanks to the power he received, but he does not remember anyone named Woojin. Since Woojin is not with the group he initially suspected, he wonders if Woojin also received the same miracle of regression. However, Seong-jun quickly dismisses the idea, saying it is impossible and a pointless thought. He departs with a serious expression, saying that he needs to focus on his own goals, because if he loses the hidden piece, his plans for growth will collapse. Woojin remains in the room, watching Seong-jun and remarking that he is very cunning. He reflects that Seong-jun kept his distance until they shook hands and even concealed his reaction upon seeing the grimoire spirit. As the distance between them grows, Woojin ponders that Seong-jun might be someone like him. Many slimes have been eliminated during Woojin's time in the tower. He had finally gathered enough ingredients for his recipe. After clearing the entire room, he states that the level of cleanliness is good enough. Now he decides that he is ready to cook and tells the spirit girl, but she looks confused by Woojin's last statement. Woojin then asks for a pot, yet the girl still appears puzzled. He explains that he cannot cook with his bare hands and asks if, as the spirit of the culinary grimoire, she knows a way to cook inside the tower. Suddenly, the girl becomes excited as she remembers something important and begins casting a spell. Out of nowhere, she summons a pot, proudly stating that she can summon all the necessary cooking tools at any time. Woojin says that he will also need a spatula and a square mold, and that it would be great if the spatula were made of silicone. Now the protagonist is ready to start cooking. He declares that he will make a dish called yokan, which is the best way to utilize the slime items he collected in the tower. The slime core was glowing too brightly, so Woojin plans to use it differently due to its texture. He explains that as long as the inner part does not mix with the slime fluid, he can use it to create patterns. As he cuts the slime core, he notes that it has a rubbery texture and decides to slice it separately and use it like tapioca. He then decides to boil all the slime fluid to remove toxins. After that, he pours the slime fluid into the mold. While the edges of the fluid dry, he adds the sliced slime core into the mold. He states that the melted part inside the pot is the key. Then he says that if the slime fluid cools down enough, it can be used as a broth. Afterward, he pours the liquid over the mold that already contains the other ingredients. Now, Woojin starts stirring with a spatula to create patterns in the dish. He explains that the patterns will change the texture and taste, keeping it interesting. Then he uses a freezing technique to cool the dish. After that, he rotates the mold to remove the yoken, and with that, he completes his new dish called slime yoken. Both the girl and Woojin are very satisfied with the result, and the excited spirit girl urges Woojin to cut a piece quickly. Suddenly, a message from the culinary system appears, stating that a new recipe has been added. The two look at the message, surprised as the information about the slime yoken made by Woojin is being processed. Then it is revealed that Woojin's dish is ranked F, and he is in disbelief at the result, while the girl tells him to check until the end. The dish's quality rating had not yet been revealed. Woojin then asks if the dish's quality is more important than its ranking, and the girl replies that it is. Suddenly, a message appears stating that Woojin has leveled up. Many notification windows pop up for Woojin, but one catches his attention the most, the one that states his dish has an A-level quality rating. Another notification appears, saying that a recipe has been unlocked based on the objectives achieved. The girl congratulates Woojin, saying that an A-level quality rating is truly remarkable. Woojin is still skeptical that his dish turned out good despite its F-rank classification. The girl reminds him that he asked earlier about quality and overall ranking and says she will explain while they eat. Woojin says he doesn't mind and begins to cut a piece of the food, and then the girl quickly takes a bite of the slime yoken. The girl loves the protagonist's food, saying that it is unbelievably delicious and that making the contract was the best decision she ever made. She then begins explaining that the quality rating represents how delicious the food is. She says that an A-rank classification means it is truly a high-level gourmet dish. As for the overall ranking, it represents the difficulty of preparing the dish, and since slime yoken has a simple preparation process, it resulted in a lower rank. She continues by saying that the higher the quality and rank, the more points Woojin can earn, and he can also gain more by completing achievements. Woojin tastes his dish and analyzes it, saying that it has a bitter and spicy flavor that merges with a sweet taste and that the texture is pleasant to eat. The girl tells Woojin that the recipe book has been activated and that recipes are the heart of the dungeon culinary grimoire. She continues, saying that Woojin can buy recipes with points and that there are all kinds of recipes for every type of delicacy. Woojin observes his panel, reflecting that dishes have been unlocked. The girl notices that Woojin doesn't seem impressed but concludes that it's because he was the one who made the dish himself. Woojin questions whether he has enough points to buy all the recipes, but the girl tells him that while he has earned many points, there is a catch. She explains that normally, one must complete missions to unlock recipes, starting with simple dishes and gradually improving their skills. Woojin then realizes that he ignored the conventional training method, and the girl confirms it. The girl explains that missions unlock recipes, and better dishes help level up faster, allowing access to even better recipes. She then states that in all the thousands of years, no one had ever created a high-level recipe and reached level 4 in this way. Woojin understands that he leveled up and earned points by creating a recipe without completing missions, and the girl confirms, telling him that he can continue creating recipes. Woojin remembers that only hunters receive missions from the grimoire and thinks about clearing the area quickly to complete the tower, but then he recalls something. He remembers that the dungeon could be a great place to obtain unknown ingredients and that it would be a shame to leave right away. With that in mind, he decides that he will make more dishes, remembering that the tower will close in 2 weeks. Woojin reaches the second floor of the tower and gets caught in an arrow trap. Although it is not a major challenge, he notices that many things have changed on this floor. He notes that the traps have become more difficult and that the slimes had gained unique characteristics, making them harder to deal with. Those who wandered freely on the first floor must now focus more on surviving on the second floor, but this was not a great difficulty for Woojin. After all, he is someone who follows his own path. Woojin had already finished his battles and was now preparing another dish. He had made a red slime jelly with a B-level quality rating. As the girl enjoys the jelly, praising it and saying it was a brilliant idea that broke stereotypes, Woojin remarks that he has failed again. The girl disagrees, asking what part of that wonderful dish was bad, and tells Woojin that he has already made many dishes in the past 10 days. She says that the grimoire has leveled up to level 3 and that Woojin has gained 15 more points, but Woojin remains despondent, saying that it was due to his own lack of competence. However, he concludes that the reason his rating does not increase is the limitation of ingredients, as he has been searching for ingredients across 2 floors for 10 days. Woojin recalls that the first floor only had green slimes, while the second had slimes of various attributes, but even so, relying only on slimes is very limiting. He grumbles that if he had just a little chocolate, his dish would have been perfect. The spirit girl, who had been listening to everything, seems uneasy, and tells Woojin that he has more talent than any chef she has ever seen. She continues, saying that Woojin needs fundamental knowledge to achieve good results. With that, she states that the passion for creating new dishes should be the virtue of a chef, and that Woojin has talent but lacks knowledge about the grimoire. Concluding, she argues that it is more important for Woojin to work on his foundations by making existing recipes rather than creating new ones. Woojin reflects on what the girl said, realizes that she is right, and decides to start from step 1 by asking what they should do next. He finds a dish called King Slime Ice Cream and is surprised by the name, becoming interested. He decides to start making this dish that caught his attention, checking its ingredients. He recalls that he has not seen any monster resembling a king slime in this tower and wonders if he should leave the tower. But before he can act, it is revealed that the king slime is on the 3rd floor of the tower. He celebrates, realizing that he has already discovered the entrance to the 3rd floor and that things are going well. Woojin and the spirit girl then begin heading toward the 3rd floor of the tower, with their target being the king slime. It has been 10 days since Woojin entered the portal, and in the city of Seoul, where the portal is located, reporters have surrounded the area. That day was when those who completed the 3rd floor would emerge from the portal. 2 citizens watching the scene comment that those coming out that day have already been claimed by guilds and that they are just waiting for a guild to fail. They wonder who will exit the portal first, and suddenly, someone steps out. The person emerging is Bak Seolha, the first daughter of the leader of the Chianate Guild. Many reporters become frantic, eager to interview the remarkable rookie, asking if she will join her father's guild. She arrogantly states that she will refuse any interview that was not scheduled in advance and demands that they step aside. One of the observing men says that this is unfair, while the other asks why. The same man explains that it is unfair because she is beautiful, has wealthy relatives, and is also talented, and tells them to keep an eye out for someone they can recruit. One of them argues that no one who reached the 3rd floor of the tower would join a small guild like theirs, but the other counters by saying there are always exceptions. The man with glasses complains that they have to wait another 4 days since the best talents exit on the 10th day, while the 13th is their last chance to find someone promising. He adds that those who leave on the 14th day are just the quitters and the useless ones, so they must wait for them. Inside the tower, Woojin is still fighting slimes. Woojin comments that the structure of the 3rd floor is very different from the 1st and 2nd floors. He notes that while the 1st and 2nd floors were labyrinths, the 3rd is divided into separate rooms. Suddenly, he spots an entrance unlike any he has seen before and assumes it must be a special room. Woojin begins walking toward the unfamiliar door, and as he steps through it, he finds himself in a forest filled with trees and vegetation. He is amazed to see a forest inside the tower. The spirit girl wonders if they have left the tower and gone outside, but she is not sure. Woojin states that it does not seem to be the outside world, as he spots slimes ahead. Further in, he sees an altar dedicated to a slime. Suddenly, his culinary system beeps, announcing that a special ingredient has been detected and that unlocking the recipe requires 20 points. Now, Woojin is certain that the king slime is there and confirms the mission. He remarks that this system has even more convenient features than he initially thought. Woojin senses a presence approaching from behind. Standing there is Seong-jun, who has just arrived. Seong-jun comments that it took him longer than he wanted to get there and still suspicious, suspects that Woojin came alone for the unknown hidden piece. Woojin greets him with a smile, saying that Seong-jun has reached the 3rd floor. Seong-jun says that the tutorial tower can only be completed once, so he wanted to go all the way to the end, and adds that Woojin is impressive for having made it this far as well. Woojin says that there is something in this room that he needs to secure, and at that moment, Seong-jun is certain that he was right. Seong-jun believes that Woojin is also after the unknown piece. He says that he is exhausted from the entire journey and needs to rest for a bit, but his true intention is to observe Woojin. The spirit girl asks Woojin if he is going to summon the Slime King right now, but he replies that he has too few ingredients and needs to hunt more slime. Seong-jun, who is watching, realizes that Woojin is hunting more slimes in order to summon the Slime King. The system displays that Woojin will need 200 slime fluids and 200 slime cores to summon the king. With only 4 days left before the tower closes, Seong-jun decides to monitor Woojin and then monopolize the boss when the time comes. On the 12th day since entering the portal, Woojin is hunting slimes. Woojin has no difficulty eliminating the slimes and manages to collect a lot of items, but Seong-jun is lurking, observing Woojin's every move. Woojin continues to eliminate every slime he encounters in the forest while still being watched. The process repeats, and soon, the 13th day arrives. On the 14th day, Seong-jun reflects that the tower will close tomorrow. He remembers that this is his last chance to obtain the unknown piece in the tutorial tower, and that he cannot afford to wait another 3 months for the portal to open again. Seongjun notices that Woojin continues collecting slime items and assumes that he already knows the conditions to summon the Slime King. Seongjun thinks that Woojin is stalling before summoning the boss while he keeps watching him, noticing that Woojin has been eating toxic substances. He speculates that the grimoire has an ability that makes monsters edible, thinking that this would be very useful for survival in dungeons. But he quickly dismisses these thoughts as useless and tries to find a way to hunt the boss without Woojin noticing. Seongjun had observed that in the last 4 days, Woojin would leave the area for 30 minutes to 2 hours. He notes that Woojin's return is unpredictable, like a gamble, but there is no other choice. With this in mind, he wonders if he will be able to defeat the boss and obtain the unknown piece in just 30 minutes. He realizes that hesitation leads to missed opportunities and decides to summon the boss at the next available chance, now that he has all the necessary materials. As soon as Woojin leaves the area, Seongjun moves in to summon the boss. Standing before the altar, he places all the required slime items onto it. He waits anxiously for the boss's summoning, still feeling uneasy. Suddenly, a light from the sky illuminates the entire altar, and in an instant, the Slime King appears, a black-colored slime wearing a crown. It makes its first attack by bouncing off the ground, destroying the entire surrounding area. The dust thrown into the air disorients Seongjun. At that moment, the Slime King launches its first attack directly at Seongjun. Woojin, who was walking elsewhere, suddenly stops, and the spirit girl finds it strange. With a serious expression, he says that he needs to return to the altar immediately. The battle is already intense, and the Slime King attempts to strike Seongjun, but he easily dodges the attack. Seongjun prepares to counterattack and charges forward, striking the slime with his spear. With this attack, he pierces a hole through the slime's chest, and the monster seems to have felt some pain. Seongjun then thinks that his attack is working. He reflects that it has been half a year since he returned from the future, and affirms that knowing the future alone is not enough. Suddenly, the Slime King enters a state of rage. Seongjun thinks about how his meticulous preparations prevented the destruction of the world, and as the slime attacks, he easily dodges. Then, in a swift motion, he leaps onto the slime, declaring that he will not rest for even a single day. In the blink of an eye, Seongjun is soaring above the slime, ready to drive his spear into it using mana. He envelops his spear in his aura and launches a powerful attack, striking the slime from above. After attacking, he thinks again about how his strikes are significantly affecting the boss. Before the slime can retaliate, he retreats to create distance. He reflects that his combat ability is far superior to what it was in his past. Still in battle, Seongjun says that at this rate, he will be able to collect the unknown piece while dodging the slime's attacks. Meanwhile, Woojin has already arrived at the scene and is watching Seongjun, commenting that he's not doing too bad. He observes that Seongjun was not resisting the overwhelming power of the Slime King. Instead, he was letting it flow while adding his own strength. Woojin notices that Seongjun appears to be around his age, but his skills do not match his supposed years. Woojin observes an energy radiating from the tip of Seongjun's spear. The energy is weak, but does not seem to be coming from the spear itself. Woojin realizes that Seongjun's abilities exceed his internal energy, and thinks that if he were his disciple, he would become much stronger. The spirit girl tells Woojin that this is the perfect chance for them to hunt the Slime King. But Woojin immediately reprimands her, saying that it would not be appropriate. He recalls how, in the past, Manhua was furious when someone stole his dungeon boss kill, and that the people he encountered earlier in the tower were just like Manhua. Woojin states that it is only courtesy not to interfere while Seongjun defeats the boss, as the battle between Seongjun and the Slime King continues to intensify. Seongjun is struggling in the battle, and admits that even with his desperate training, it is still difficult to handle this alone. He notices that his mana is almost completely drained. As he is about to be struck by the slime, he reflects that this might be his last chance. He dodges the attack by sliding underneath and thinks that if he pierces the slime at this moment, he might be able to defeat it, to finally lay his hands on the unknown piece he has been desperately seeking. But something feels off when he lands his attack. As the slime collapses onto the ground, he suddenly sees Woojin standing there once again. He is in disbelief, saying that this is impossible. Seongjun mutters that the pattern Woojin had shown him over the past 4 days did not work today. The moment he gets distracted, the Slime King lands a devastating blow, sending Seongjun flying. He crashes into the trunk of a tree. Lying on the ground, Seongjun groans, saying that he missed his attack because he paid attention to Woojin. He states that his wound is too severe for him to get up again. Frustrated, he admits that despite everything, he is still just pathetic, a failure. He laughs bitterly, thinking how foolish he was to believe he could change the future. Just because he returned to the past, he thought he was being arrogant. It seems that Seongjun had lost someone important to him in his painful future. Back in the present, Seongjun has not given up. He grits his teeth and tries to stand. As he struggles to rise, he declares that it does not matter if he is arrogant or a failure. If he thinks that way, he will never change what happened in the future. He reflects on how many times he has been on the brink of destruction and how much he regrets all of them. He now realizes that if he had pushed harder with determination, feeling renewed, he declares that he will not repeat his past mistakes. Seon-jun awakens with fury, ready to burn his life force to defeat the monster, determined that he cannot give up. As he channels energy to the tip of his spear, he states that if he loses to something like this, he will never be able to change the future, and he is absolutely certain that he will eliminate the Slime King. Then he dashes forward to attack the slime, but before he can strike, he feels an intense pain. His attack is interrupted as he starts coughing up blood, saying that his body is in terrible condition. With the slime about to attack him again, he thinks that this is the end. But just before everything is over, he sees a streak of light slicing through the Slime King. He does not fully understand what is happening, and then he loses consciousness. Woojin had saved Seon-jun at the last second. A notification window appears before Woojin, announcing that the Slime King has been defeated. He receives the items Slime King Core and Slime King Fluid. The spirit girl is astonished that Woojin defeated the boss with a single strike and says that this level of skill was expected from him. As he looks down at Seon-jun on the ground, Woojin calls him a disgrace. Woojin comments that when Seon-jun noticed him on the battlefield, his focus wavered, leading him to take a heavy attack and panic. Woojin remarks that it was reckless to extract energy while his body was already injured, and because of that, he put himself in a terrible state. But even in that condition, he still had the ability to escape. Woojin then concludes that Seon-jun was after the Slime King's cue. Knowing that Seon-jun can hear him, Woojin states that if he had not intervened, Seon-jun would have died. Then Woojin declares that he will take the cue as compensation for saving him. After defeating the Slime King, Woojin admits that he is truly curious about the taste of the Slime King. As soon as he takes a bite of the slime, he is shocked by the flavor. He remarks that despite its intense sourness, it has a sweet taste and a smooth texture, making it truly delicious, just like durian, the celestial fruit. After tasting the slime, he says that it wasn't a boss for nothing, that he couldn't resist, and that he had to cook at that moment. He starts organizing his thoughts and deciding what to do. Looking at the recipe, he expects something special since it involves an ingredient from the Slime King, but he finds the methods too ordinary and feels like something is missing. The spirit girl quickly assures him that there is nothing wrong with the recipe. After hearing that, Woojin says that if she insists, he will follow the recipe as instructed. First, he begins by boiling the slime fluid to add a sweet flavor. Then he freezes the slime cubes to crush them into powder afterward. He envelops the slime cube using a technique called Black Abyss. Once surrounded by this dark aura, the cube is completely destroyed within it, finally grinding it down. Woojin reflects that this martial art was originally created for this purpose, but on the Central Plains, it had harmed many people. After that, he adds the ground cubes to the original fluid. Then he starts mixing everything with a spatula. He notices that the viscosity is remarkable, enhanced when he added the ground fluid, making the result fascinating. He states that, according to the recipe, this applies to all slimes. He realizes that this wasn't the way he had previously melted the cubes and reflects that the shelf life of ingredients varies greatly depending on the cooking method. He finds all of this interesting and finishes the dish, and thus the Slime King ice cream is complete. His system identifies it as an E+ ranked dish with A-level quality. Woojin's system notifies him that he has gained experience, unlocked many achievements, and leveled up significantly. After finishing the dish, he declares that it is complete and that they should taste it. The spirit girl agrees. Just as they are about to taste the ice cream, they hear a groan. Seon-jun had woken up from his sleep. Upon waking, he asks how long he was unconscious. Seon-jun reflects that his mana has not fully recovered yet and that he got up much earlier than expected. He says that his whole body feels like it's on fire. He notices that some of his ribs are broken, but he can still move. He sees Woojin in front of him, doing something curious. Seon-jun affirms that he wasn't mistaken, recalling Woojin defeating the Slime King before he passed out. He notices that Woojin is holding something in his hands. It's the unknown piece. Seon-jun admits that he was too careless, and so Woojin obtained the unknown piece from the tutorial tower, the piece that appears only once and will not appear again. Seon-jun laments the failure of his plans and considers hiding the piece, even thinking about ambushing Woojin while he was occupied with the slime. He reflects on the opportunities lost because of Woojin but decides that there's no point in dwelling on it and calms himself, remembering that not everything is lost. He concludes that Woojin won't share the unknown piece, so he will have to take it by force. At that moment, he gathers his strength and tries to stand up to seize the unknown piece. But before he can do anything, Woojin offers him a taste of the ice cream. Seon-jun is perplexed and remains silent, truly confused by the situation. Woojin tells him that he should have some as well since he must be very exhausted. Seon-jun thanks him and wonders why Woojin would be sharing with him. He thinks that this is a golden opportunity and decides to take advantage of it. He doesn't understand why Woojin is giving him this, but he assumes it must be fine as long as they don't kill each other in the tutorial tower. As soon as he takes a bite of the ice cream, it feels like his mind explodes. He questions whether Woojin is truly a culinary grimoire contractor and wonders what kind of hellish flavor this is. He asks himself if this is really edible, if this is actually food. He truly does not understand, saying that the grimoire spirit isn't human, so it makes sense. But this guy is human. How is he able to eat this? Yet he keeps eating, deciding that since this is the unknown peace, he must consume it for the sake of future peace. He takes another spoonful of the ice cream, telling himself to endure it and push through. As soon as he swallows the ice cream, a system window opens for him. The system states that by consuming the Slime King ice cream, he has been imbued with the pure energy of the slime and that his abilities have increased. His mana has risen by 5. He is in shock, saying that he has never heard of unknown pieces enhancing abilities. He realizes that the grimoire grants stat boosts through food. Then Woojin calls out to Seon-jun, who is still confused. He asks him if he liked the food. Seon-jun reflects that the ingredient was a monster and concludes that Woojin must have done his best. He then says that it was actually delicious. Woojin asks if he is being serious. After that, Seon-jun thanks Woojin for saving him earlier. But as he looks at Woojin, he feels a strange sensation. He says that now he is certain of it. He realizes that he needs to escape at that very moment. He is absolutely sure that if he does not run now, Woojin will make him eat another one of his dishes. Seon-jun quickly thanks him again for saving him and for sharing his food. But before he can finish, Woojin tells him that he has more dishes for him to try. Seon-jun rushes away, running as he says that he cannot trouble his savior any further and thanks him for everything. Woojin watches him leave and says that it is shameful. The spirit girl comments that, indeed, he is someone who appreciates the chef's cooking, and that she is the only one in the world who does. Woojin says that perhaps they will meet again. Jim mentions that the next day will be their last in the tower and suggests that they should gather more ingredients. In the city of Seiyuu, there are only 2 hours left before the tutorial portal closes. Suddenly, Woojin emerges from the portal with the spirit girl by his side. She says that it feels great to breathe fresh air after such a long time. Woojin states that they will return now, and the girl agrees. Woojin receives a message from the system congratulating him for completing the tutorial tower, officially making him a hunter and granting him access to the status window and inventory. Woojin is surprised as he reads about the status and inventory windows, but he suddenly senses a presence behind him and immediately grabs what appears to be a spirit. With his full aura, he intimidates the spirit that had been hovering around him. With a serious expression, he asks what it is. The frightened girl tells the chef to calm down. Another system window pops up, asking Woojin if he would like to check the instructions on how to use the inventory and status window. He wonders what would happen if he declined. Thinking it through, he makes up his mind and decides to accept. Suddenly, the spirit begins merging into his body, and Woojin finds it fascinating. He realizes that he can open both the status and inventory windows just by thinking about them, and that he can freely check his stats and store or retrieve items. Displayed there are quests, daily missions that require him to cook in a dungeon and serve food to another person. Woojin comments that this is much simpler than he expected, and the spirit girl confirms that those are the daily missions. Woojin reflects that cooking is not a problem since he does it all the time, but the real issue is serving food to others. He says that if the situation gets worse, he will have to force Xion-ho to eat the dish. Suddenly, a voice calls out to Woojin, addressing him as Brat, and scolding him for daring to enter the portal without informing him. The man speaking is Xion-ho, who says that he has been waiting all day for Woojin. Woojin is surprised and wonders why Xion-ho was even there. Xion-ho explains that he is there to take Woojin back and congratulates him for reaching the 3rd floor. But without wasting time, Xion-ho gets straight to the point. He asks Woojin to join his guild. The scene cuts, and Woojin and the spirit girl are walking together when the girl remarks that they have arrived. She is amazed by the structure of the Hunter Academy. Woojin, also surprised by the place, confirms that this is the academy. On the way home, Woojin and Xion-ho argue about joining the guild. Woojin claims that he does not have enough skills, but Xion-ho doubts that he only cleared the 1st floor. Xion-ho recommends Woojin for the guild, saying that if he passes the practical test, he can join the same guild as him, and that sounds like a great opportunity. Even so, Woojin refuses, and Xion-ho becomes visibly frustrated. Xion-ho tries to convince Woojin by offering benefits, equipment, special schedules tailored to his skills, and questions why he is rejecting it. Woojin responds that this is exactly why he is refusing, which deeply frustrates Xion-ho. Woojin then reveals that he became a hunter to improve his culinary skills, shocking Xianho. Xianho questions if Woojin abandoned his dream of becoming a chef when he entered the tower. Woojin firmly states that he would never do that. Xianho exclaims that Woojin will regret this deeply if he keeps acting this way. They both stop walking, and Woojin asks why. Xianho reveals that if Woojin does not register with a guild within a week, the government will send him to the Hunter Academy. Woojin is confused upon hearing the name of the academy, and Xianho says that it is exactly as he heard. Xianho then begins explaining that it is a state-run academy for hunters and that the treatment inside is terrible, making it difficult to transfer to private guilds. Xianho says that there is a lot of discrimination inside, and the education system is outdated. Woojin explains that the Hunter Academy can access any dungeon in Jung with an observer, but warns that the dangers are greater than they seem. Woojin gets excited upon learning that they can enter any dungeon and says he will think more about it, but is feeling a little tired right now. Xianho understands that Woojin is exhausted and eases up on him. Then Xianho tells him to make sure he decides before he gets dragged into the academy. Woojin replies that he will decide as soon as possible. Woojin receives a message on his phone and reflects that he only has until next week. The message was from the Hunter Academy, making him realize he needs to make a careful decision. While cooking another dish, Woojin reflects that, unlike the tower, where ingredients were limited to things like slimes, the outside world offers an abundance of options. Woojin says that thanks to this, he can create new recipes and gain 2 more levels within the week, but he failed the mission of serving food to someone else. He tried to serve food to Xianho, but Xianho refused, saying he would only eat it if Woojin joined his guild. Woojin then calls Xianho ungrateful. The spirit girl says that it's a shame and asks Woojin if he will still be a chef if he joins the Hunter Academy. Woojin firmly states that this is exactly why he became a hunter in the first place. Even if he joins the academy, he intends to keep cooking. Suddenly, Woojin receives a call from Xianho and assumes that Xianho must have already found out about his intention to join the academy. So he hangs up, calling Xianho an ungrateful brat. Woojin has now arrived at the Hunter Academy. They are surprised by the place, and the spirit girl comments that the atmosphere there is quite unique. They observe a young man who is very excited about becoming a hunter, but at the same time, he is filled with concerns about his future. As the spirit girl watches the people, she remarks that there are all kinds of people in this place. Woojin notices that, for a renovated but previously abandoned high school, the hallways and gymnasium are very clean. Woojin hears students talking about someone named Jay, mentioning an article that highlighted his achievement of reaching the 3rd floor and how he resembles the photo published. Baek Seolha is also there and is questioned about why she is present, considering that she had already joined the Chianic Guild. Woojin becomes curious about what kind of person she is. Woojin also spots Si Hongjun there and says that he did not expect to see him. The spirit girl notices someone on the stage and tells Woojin to look at him. She comments that the guy looks like he has a head as smooth as a griffin's egg. Then the entrance ceremony begins, and they are now about to hear the academy director speak. The academy director steps onto the stage and prepares to speak. He begins by introducing himself as the director of the Hunter Academy, stating that his name is Lee Qianjai, while the students are startled by his intense tone of voice. Lee Qiangi says that he is deeply troubled by the decline in the prestige of the Hunter Academy. Woojin notices that the energy of this speech reminds him of something. He recalls his most loyal subordinate, the leader of the 3 demons of the celestial demonic sect. The director continues, saying that there are many reasons for the current situation, but the most fundamental one is the lies and attitudes of the students who enter the academy. Woojin then notices something and mutters that he is here as well. The blood demon, Wak Chi Eon. There stood the leader of the 3 demons of the celestial demonic sect, Blood Demon Wak Chi Eon. Woojin is surprised to see Elder Guak in this world as the director brings up the chaos of the gate incident that occurred 30 years ago. He remembers that Elder Guak was his most loyal soldier, still valiant, and that Chai Eon once remarked that Ju Jiang Maion, the leader of the Ju family, was similar to him. Jiang did not rely on items and became strong purely through training. And now he questions what has happened to the hunters of today. He asks who would enter the tutorial tower without protection, while Woojin reflects that the elder has found happiness in this world and decides that he will help him. Seonjun watches with intrigue, looking at the director and admitting that no matter how much he tries, he cannot remember who he is. He says that that guy had single-handedly subdued B-rank monsters and that Lee Chien-gae was there during the gate incident. He says that after researching on HunterNet, he found that Lee Chien-gae's words were true. Seon-jun reflects that with that level of skill, why did he become just an academy director? Seon-jun reflects that before the regression, the academy director was not Lee Chae-young-ji, and that he wouldn't forget something so fundamental. Seon-jun then concludes that he needs to find the other changes caused by his regression, and that's why he came to the academy. With a serious expression on his face, he says that this was just the beginning. He says that he needs to investigate what happened due to his regression. Suddenly, a teacher was instructing students on how to punch, saying that they needed to attack the mannequin with full force, and that once the attack was over, the points would appear in front of them. He concludes by saying that this was just a test to assess the students' levels and that he would explain the academy's rules after the test ended. The teacher continues, saying that those who use weapons could practice with the weapons on the left, and then asks if anyone has any questions. A girl raises her hand and questions why they need to do it 5 times if once would be enough. The teacher explains that it is to measure how long they can maintain their maximum power, and another student asks what the highest score the vice director has ever shown was. The teacher then says that he is a B-rank hunter and that it would be easier if they use that as a reference. He then says that if there are no more questions, they will proceed, and he asks them to form a line and step forward. The first girl delivers her first attack, scoring 302 points. Another boy throws his first punch and earns a score of 272 points. Another young man attacks the mannequin and achieves a score of 403 points. Woojin, observing the other participants, comments that he already understands the scoring criteria. Despite some new techniques, the skills are disappointing. The spirit girl noticed a familiar person, and the next to take the test was Seong-jun. Woojin reflects that Seong-jun has returned and hadn't used his power before because he was concerned about him, wondering how Seong-jun will act now. Woojin says that based on the martial arts he had shown before, he should be able to score around 19,000 points. And then Seong-jun strikes the mannequin, and thus he receives a grand total of 3,097 points. Woojin realizes that he was hiding his strength since he had used energy on his spear in the tower. Woojin continues, saying that the score was very good and surpassed all previous scores, but Seong-jun must have a reason for hiding his power. Other participants say that finally it was her turn. And then the next participant was Bak-seul, who was already on her way to the mannequin. The audience wondered how many points Bak-seul would achieve. She begins breathing deeply, preparing for her attack, while a blue aura of intense concentration surrounds her body. In the blink of an eye, with her incredible speed, she charges at the mannequin and delivers her attack. All the participants are amazed by the astonishing speed she displayed when striking the mannequin. And so the scoring machine was calculating her score, and with that magnificent attack, she reached 10,793 points, thus achieving a perfect score, which to her seemed effortless. All the participants are shocked and frightened upon seeing that she achieved a perfect score. Some guys wonder if she was using some kind of artifact, but they quickly realize she wasn't. Woojin then attacks and scores 222 points. Thus, he decides it is best to stay out of this competition. Seong-jun and Bak-seul's high scores became a hot topic among the students, leading Woojin to enroll in the academy after receiving the rules from Min-sung. After some time, the Hunter Academy dormitory is shown. Woojin, who was already cooking, says that the dormitory wasn't so bad. Woojin then observes that there was a different kind of freedom there compared to his home, and while cooking he realized that salad goes well with blue slime base. Woojin's brother had told him that he would be exploited at the academy, but Woojin wonders why he would join a guild in such a troublesome place. He reflects that at the academy, he can cook whenever he wants and can serve others. Woojin says that besides that, the classes are very interesting and that he needs to learn the basic theory with many subjects about common dungeon monsters. Woojin says that students complain that they can find information quickly on the internet, but underestimate the value of learning directly from teachers. Suddenly, Woojin says that now that he thinks about it, today was the day he needed to do something, and that he should leave before it was too late. Now in the Hunter's Academy gym, the instructor greets the students, and it seems that a new activity is about to begin. The instructor starts by saying that today, as previously announced, it would be their first mission, and he would now announce the teams for the dungeon exploration. The instructor says that he will now call the students and the hunters with observation skills. They will lead the exploration of a low-level dungeon as a team, and with that, the instructor proceeds to call out the names. Woojin reflects that a dungeon exploration mission is really exciting, and after that, the instructor starts calling the students in order. Then the instructor announces that the next team would be Yu Se-yeon, Park Il-ho, and the observer hunter would be Yu Woojin Kim. Kim Jong and Lee Ji-yi were in another team, and their observer would be Kim Jong-do. And now, the instructor was about to announce the last team, Chien Woojin and Bak Se-young, the girl who had scored 10,000 points. Woojin becomes alert upon hearing that he would be teaming up with Bak Se-young. The girl doesn't seem very pleased about having to team up with such a weak hunter. The instructor announces Kim Chi-guk as the observer hunter, leaving the students surprised as they associate him with the renowned hunter from the Ju family. The spirit girl comments that it seems like this guy is very famous, and with that, the announcements come to an end. The instructor explains that after the presentation of the observer hunters, they should find their teams, most of whom are from the academy, while others are guests. As the entrance doors open, the instructor concludes by saying that their task is to complete the exploration dungeon under the guidance of the observers. At that moment, the hunters had arrived, and the students were supposed to look for their respective teams. Kim Chi-guk entered the gym, causing an uproar among the students, who wondered if the academy had really recruited him. Kim Chi-guk quickly made his way toward Woojin's team. He said he would speak casually and asked if that was okay. The girl responded that it was fine, and Kim thought that this would be a good opportunity to do a favor in exchange for something from Chien-ik. Kim explained to the girl that he had declined being a lecturer but accepted because of his connection with Chien-ik and the Ju family, suggesting that she should learn from a B-rank hunter like him. The girl looked at Kim with disdain and firmly stated that she was just Cadet Baek Seol from the academy, not the daughter of Chien-ik from the Baek Dujang Guild. Kim felt awkward and said he understood and would be more careful from now on. The spirit girl, who had been observing, commented that this guy was irritating and seemed to be disrespecting them. Woojin said nothing and just continued watching. Kim revealed that he had analyzed the list of available dungeons, all of which were focused on training, and showed his phone to his two teammates. Baek was surprised by the location they were assigned and asked if they were really going there. Kim confirmed with a serious expression that they were heading to the Killer Bee dungeon. They had arrived at Nangaru Station, where the entrance to the Killer Bee dungeon was located. Kim explained that although the dungeon looked like a pleasant park, hunters avoided it due to its F-rank classification. The reason was the killer bees, treacherous F-rank monsters. Baek thought that this dungeon would be too dangerous for Woojin. She remembered that Woojin had scored very low on the test and that he wasn't very skilled with a sword. She approached Woojin, saying that the Killer Bee dungeon was too dangerous and suggesting that they should perhaps talk to Hunter Chaeguk. But before anything else, Kim stated that as a B-rank hunter, his presence alone meant they wouldn't have any problems, and then he tried to remember the other participant's name. Woojin introduced himself, and the two exchanged greetings. Kim continued, saying that it wouldn't be right to underestimate Woojin as he had passed through the tower, concluding that he must have some ability to protect himself. Woojin didn't react, simply listening to the conversation. Kim commented that other guilds were sending their rookies to low-level dungeons, making them overcrowded and unsuitable for proper training. Woojin reflected that the other dungeons were too easy, so only Seol Ho would end up fighting, and he wouldn't have the chance to show his skills. Kim said that they wanted them to get the most out of this training, so he concluded that unless a boss or a C rank or higher monster appeared, they wouldn't have any problems. However, he added that this dungeon was known for not having a boss, so there was no need to worry. With that, he asks if they have no objections, would they enter now? Baek says nothing but thinks that in this case it was fine. The spirit girl was very irritated by the way Kim spoke. Now inside the dungeon, Kim says that before they start practicing, they will discuss insect-type monsters. He says that insect-type monsters have a common poison, and that they have already learned about it in class. Kim quickly attacks, piercing through a bee with his spear while mentioning the swarm controller, and that if you neutralize one of them, the rest would be much easier to handle. Baek had already located the leader of the bees all at once and attacked it immediately. Kim praises her work and explains that the mana of the bee leader is unique but difficult to identify without experience, proposing another method. Woojin was searching the area for ingredients while Chaeguk and Baek conversed. Woojin finds a fenestra plant and notices the diversity of ingredients compared to the tutorial tower, deciding to collect as much as possible since they only exist in dungeons. Kim says that if Baek requested it from the Ju family, she could have private lessons whenever he had time. Kim grows curious upon seeing Woojin's behavior, wondering what he has been doing since they arrived. Kim, looking down on him, orders Woojin to stop collecting grass and follow them, thinking that academy students are useless. Baek just observes and says nothing, thinking that Woojin is like a textbook. Kim emphasizes that the basics of dungeon exploration consist of prioritizing an understanding of the environment and ecology during exploration. Growing impatient, Kim scolds Woojin, ordering him to stop collecting and join the group, questioning why he is exploring a dungeon that has already been investigated. The spirit girl becomes irritated, calling Kim an annoying idiot and questioning how he dared to interrupt the sacred moment of the chief collecting ingredients. Kim, already tired of yelling at Woojin, tells Seol Ha to follow him, leaving Woojin behind. Suddenly, Woojin had acquired a recipe called Killer Bee Honey, and one of its ingredients was the honeycomb jelly of an assassin bee. Woojin says that they had been inside the dungeon for 10 minutes, but he had not seen a single honeycomb jelly. He reflects that even though assassin bees are huge, Their behavior should not be different from normal bees. Kim and Baek were fighting against the bees, and at that moment, Kim tells Baek not to overdo it because she cannot get injured. Woojin, while searching for the honeycomb jelly, states that he needs to explore this place and explains that staying with the group hinders his ingredient collection. He distances himself from the group, saying that they are skilled and would not be in danger without him. They had already eliminated 15 bees, but they kept coming without giving them a break. Baek says that even though they neutralized the bee leader, the bees continued moving as a group from the beginning. Baek reflects that if it weren't for Kim, they would be in serious danger. She says that this dungeon was much more dangerous than she had heard. She adds that if it was like this for her, then for Woojin, it must be even more complicated. But when she looks back, Woojin had disappeared from her sight. She becomes confused, not understanding the situation at all. Kim says that in situations like this, but before he can finish his sentence, Baek says that he is gone. At first, Kim did not understand, so Baek clarifies that Woojin had disappeared. Kim panics upon hearing that and begins shouting Woojin's name, hoping he will appear. Kim becomes extremely stressed, calling Woojin an idiot and saying that he never liked him, especially for just collecting grass while they hunted. Suddenly, the two hear an incredibly loud thunderous sound. Kim feels his head shake and his vision blur, realizing that the sound was different from the flapping wings of the assassin bees. Baek also feels her head hurting due to the deafeningly loud sound, and suddenly, a red window appeared above their heads. The two panic, not understanding the situation at all. The alert stated that, enraged by the intrusion into her nest, the queen of the assassin bees had revealed herself. Many bees launched a coordinated attack. Woojin, while cutting them all down, says that he made the right choice by distancing himself from that place and that he had many ingredients to collect on his own. He says that the faint sweet scent he had smelled before was getting stronger and that there must be even more precious ingredients ahead. While sniffing the scent, Woojin notices something along the path. The spirit girl who had fallen behind asks where Woojin is going and insists that they should stick together. As they walk, they come across a massive cave. The spirit girl questions how they didn't see it before, and Woojin explains that it was located deep within the dungeon. Woojin reflects that if he hadn't trained his sense of smell to find honey, he wouldn't have discovered the cave, and it was rare for anyone to come near this place. As he walks through the cave, he says that they might have found the source of that sweet scent. The spirit girl is amazed upon discovering a massive beehive and names the place the Honey Mine. Woojin is surprised by the size of the honey rocks and says that he would like to taste them to know their flavor. But as soon as Woojin touches the rock, a warning alert appears before them. Woojin turns around and sees that the warning states that the queen bee is enraged by the invasion of her nest. A loud sound echoes after the announcement appears, and Woojin thinks it came from outside the cave. Chiguk and Baek are running, while Chiguk says that he didn't expect things to go wrong like this. He grumbles that if he had known this would happen, he would have brought a tracker from the academy. Chiguk grows fearful at the thought that if he leaves the dungeon without one of the cadets, all his efforts to be recognized as part of the Ju family will be wasted. Baek, in desperation, suggests that they should split up to search faster, but the instructor says it's pointless. While dealing with the bees, the instructor continues saying that if she were to disappear, they would be in much greater trouble. The instructor then tells Baek that she should know in situations like this, splitting up is far more dangerous. Baek acknowledges his words, but suddenly, the instructor tells them to stop and hide. They hear a very strange noise coming from ahead but remain quiet, until the queen bee, a C-rank boss, is revealed. The instructor immediately panics and says that, without a doubt, this is a dungeon boss. But why would a boss be in an F-rank dungeon where there shouldn't be one? He adds that defeating a C-rank boss with cadets who have just become hunters would be impossible, and that he would need at least 3 B-rank hunters. He becomes frantic, remembering that after 6 hours from the boss's appearance, the dungeon will completely close, leaving only 2 options: escape or die. The instructor supposes that if he resolves this problem, Chi and Ik might reward him, so he tries to calm himself down. They comment that the boss hasn't noticed them yet, so it would be best to retreat, but before they can do so, they realize that the queen bee has already sensed their presence. Before they can react, the queen bee is already hovering over them, and suddenly, it begins its aerial attack while Chiguk tells Baek to retreat. The instructor comes up with the idea of using the geographical advantage in their favor, using the large trees to hide so they won't be easily detected. While being attacked, he says that he will buy time and that Baek should return and prepare herself. Chiguk is shocked by the bee's attack as it effortlessly cuts through all the trees. He says that it is much stronger than he expected and realizes that he will have to use his special technique, the spiral spear first form. He then charges forward, launching a series of fierce spear attacks. After this ferocious assault, the instructor realizes that all his efforts only managed to crack the bee's outer shell and tells Baek to run. Baek hesitates to flee, but the instructor insists that she leave while he holds off the bee. However, suddenly, Bake returns, saying that her father told her to never turn her back on an enemy, and so she declares that she will fight as well. The instructor loses his composure, shouting that she doesn't understand the situation. He warns her that this is a C-rank boss and that she should be careful about what comes next. Suddenly, the bee launches another extremely fast attack, but the instructor barely manages to dodge it. However, as soon as he dodges, he realizes that Seol-ha won't be able to evade it. Seol-ha charges at the bee and strikes with her sword. After Bak's attack, she reflects that she can protect herself for a while, but her attack had no effect at all, not even leaving a scratch. The instructor says it would be best if they divided their roles. While Bake distracts the bee, he will finish the attack with his spiral spear. Knowing they can't prolong the battle, he decides to end the boss with one powerful attack before his stamina runs out, planning to destroy its exterior in one blow. Thus, they launch their attack, using all their mana, saying that this would be their only chance. Bake runs ahead, drawing the bee's attention and dodging its attack. Then the bee starts chasing Bake, hunting her down. But she realizes that something was different from how it was at the beginning. The queen bee was calling other bees closer to her. Bake, while being attacked by the smaller bees, says that she needs to buy time for the instructor to get ready. At that moment, Bake thought that all was lost. But suddenly, the instructor attacks, using all his mana and executing his second form spiral spear technique, piercing through the queen bee and everything in his path. Thus, he sends the bee flying while Bake, who had fallen to the ground, asks if they had defeated it. The instructor says that not even the strongest monster in the dungeon could withstand a direct hit from his spiral spear at full power. As Bake says that it's a relief and that they should go back to looking for Woojin, she is suddenly ambushed from behind by the queen bee, which had not been defeated. Chae-guk, who is watching everything, is in shock. Before Bak can react, she is struck by the queen bee's furious attack and sent flying. She crashes hard against a tree trunk. As Chae-guk watches everything, he becomes desperate at the sheer rage of the queen bee. The instructor realizes that he has no way to resolve this situation and falls into complete despair. Reflecting on how he used all his power in the last attack, he thinks that after all this, just to gain recognition, he is going to die in a place like this. He concludes that all of this is because of that bastard Woojin, thinking that if not for him, they could have just hidden somewhere and waited for the dungeon to open. The instructor thinks that while the bee is distracted with him, Seol-ha could make a new attack, but then he realizes that the queen bee is looking elsewhere, and there he was, Woojin, coming toward them to save them. The instructor, furious, calls Woojin an idiot and asks where he has been all this time, why he only appeared now, and even tells him to run away from the monster. As Woojin prepares his attack, the instructor keeps shouting at him to run. If he stayed there, he would be killed. The queen bee charges at Woojin with full force. But before it can do anything, Woojin slices it in half with his sword in a single attack. The instructor is in complete disbelief at the sight. Woojin appears not to have even broken a sweat. Lying on the ground, the instructor asks himself what had just happened. He cannot believe what he is seeing. Woojin had cut the queen bee in half. He'd have thought Woojin was a nobody. The instructor wonders if he had been overreacting when he thought he was going to die. But after thinking it through, he realizes that the queen bee had enough power to kill him, and yet Woojin had completely annihilated it. Reevaluating his past actions toward Woojin, the instructor realizes that he is now in trouble, and as he walks toward Woojin to speak to him, he loses control due to fear and wonders how he did that. But Woojin simply ignores him and starts walking away. The instructor then realizes that he should take care of Bake, so he heads toward her. He sees that she is still unconscious but is not in mortal danger, and her mana circulation is normal. Chae-guk notices that Woojin is holding a beehive in his hands and wonders if he had wandered off to search for that. He realizes that Woojin also has an inventory and questions who got it for him, concluding that if someone close to him gave it to him, he needs to learn more about Woojin. Then he thinks that Woojin must have cleared the 3rd floor of the tutorial tower. That would be the only way this situation would make sense. The instructor keeps pondering why Woojin joined the academy instead of a guild, asking himself what the hell he really is. But then he smells a strong, unpleasant odor and wonders what Woojin is doing. The instructor approaches Woojin, asking what he is. He notices that Woojin had cooked something and questions what he was making. The instructor considers the possibility that Woojin had used alchemy to create whatever it was, and also thinks that it might be an item that repels monsters with its smell. He realizes that Woojin used the beehive in the dish, possibly from the assassin bees, but doesn't understand why he added mushrooms, thinking they were just weeds. He thinks that the dish Woojin made was meant to poison the queen bee, but since she was already dead, there was no reason for him to do that. But suddenly, Woojin offers a piece of his new dish to Chaeguk, leaving him completely stunned. Breaking into a cold sweat, he realizes that Woojin really wanted him to eat that dish and was actually cooking. Chaeguk thinks that Woojin is holding a grudge and making him eat it to make him feel sick. Chaeguk looks at the bee lying on the ground, split in half, and says that it's better for his stomach to suffer than to be cut in half while taking a bite. He reassures himself that he won't die from eating it, but as soon as he puts a piece of the cake in his mouth, he feels a horrible sensation, as if he's about to die. He describes the food as terrible, with a shocking texture, like larvae crawling in his mouth. The cooked honeycomb was too soft, and the mushrooms were too slippery. Chaeguk is confused by the dish's bitter taste, considering it should be sweet due to the honeycomb, and he wonders what Woojin added to the recipe. Still lamenting, Chaeguk believes Woojin has taken his revenge, but before anything else, Woojin asks him about the taste of the dish. With tears in his eyes, Chaeguk responds that it's delicious. But suddenly, he notices a floating window before him, saying that he has gained poison resistance and that his body has been imbued with energy. Chaeguk realizes that the dish increased his poison resistance and concludes that it happened because it was made with monster ingredients. He then observes Woojin and wonders who the hell he really is. Meanwhile, Woojin is checking the details of his dish. He comments that Chaeguk has exceeded his expectations by recognizing the value of the meal. He also says that Chaeguk has an excellent palate, more refined than he had anticipated, while many achievements unlock in his system. Woojin affirms that adding the queen bee's gland was a good choice since its spicy acidity balanced the sweetness of the jelly, creating a deeper flavor. The spirit girl tastes the dish and declares that it is the ultimate meal, encompassing the 5 basic human flavors. Woojin then concludes that he has already completed his daily missions and decides to gather more ingredients. But suddenly, Baek, who was unconscious, wakes up and gets up. She says that she definitely fainted after being ambushed by the queen bee. Observing that the queen bee has already been defeated, she assumes that instructor Chaeguk was the one who took it down, making him even more impressive than she had thought. Chaeguk, still disgusted by the food, notices that Baek has regained consciousness. The instructor gets the idea of offering some of the dish to Baek, considering that his own poison resistance had increased after eating it. He offers her the dish, saying she should eat to regain her strength, adding that Woojin was the one who prepared it. She thanks him for the meal, and as she is about to take a bite, both Chaeguk and Woojin eagerly anticipate her reaction. As she chews, Chaeguk asks how the food tastes. Surprised after swallowing the piece, she exclaims that it's delicious and that she has never tasted anything like it before. Chaeguk becomes even more confused, questioning what she just said. When Baek was a child, she had great difficulty experiencing taste. Her father, trying to help her, obtained an item from a dungeon through a friend. That item was supposed to restore her appetite. He was hopeful that it would help his daughter, but she still couldn't taste anything. Her father then fell into deep sorrow, while she apologized for being unable to taste anything despite all his efforts. She told him that it was fine and that instead of tasting food, she could experience something even better. But after trying Woojin's dish, Baek reports that it is the first time she has felt something like this. She says that she hasn't experienced anything like this in 20 years, despite her father spending a fortune and doing everything he could. Chaeguk thinks that Baek is misunderstanding the situation, assuming she lost her sense of taste due to the shock of everything that had happened. Baek says that her tongue feels numb after experiencing that flavor. Meanwhile, Chaeguk is thrown into complete confusion over what she is saying. Outside the dungeon, many people from the academy and reporters have gathered. Several news reports have emerged about the appearance of an unexpected boss in that dungeon. A boss that had remained dormant for 5 years had suddenly appeared. A man walks toward the portal's entrance. That man is Baek's father, the leader of the Chien-Ik Guild. He asks his secretary if his daughter is safe. The secretary affirms that she is because she is his daughter and will surely be fine. One of the reporters interviews Baek's father, asking how he feels knowing that his daughter is trapped inside the dungeon. The secretary snaps at the reporter, saying how dare he ask such a rude question. Realizing that this is a highly delicate situation, the reporter turns off his recorder. Baek's father was not pleased at all with the reporter's attitude, calling him an insolent fool, a worthless fool. The secretary told the guild leader to calm down, reminding him that many eyes were on them and that he should consider the guild's image. Suddenly, the portal's entry restriction was lifted, and it seemed like someone was coming out of it. The secretary and the guild leader focused their attention on the portal as the guild leader moved closer to it. And then, emerging from the portal were Baek Seol-ha, Kim, Chaeguk, and Woojin, all 3 safe and sound. The guild leader hugged his daughter, saying it was a miracle, while the crowd was astonished that a C-rank boss had been defeated by a B-rank hunter and 2 students. People noticed the item in Chaeguk's hand and affirmed that it was a trophy obtained by defeating the boss. Weapons and artifacts are classified into 5 categories: common, rare, unique, epic, and legendary. Chaeguk reflected that in Korea, the number of people possessing legendary items could be counted on one hand and that this item was extremely valuable. But the crowd quickly became emotional, turning to Chaeguk and asking how he defeated a C-rank boss and what kind of monster the assassin bee was. They kept asking questions about how he ensured the students' safety, but he was completely confused as to why they were directing these questions at him. A man recording the scene commented that it looked like Chaeguk had defeated the C-rank monster all by himself. Chaeguk, at a loss for words, remained silent while glancing at Woojin. A man in charge of the academy was worried about maintaining his position due to the academy's performance, but after seeing the news that Chaeguk had defeated a C-rank monster, he concluded that Chaeguk was responsible. Chaeguk was more skilled than he had seemed, and after the dungeon closed, various reports emerged about multiple countries showing interest in the C-rank boss. Many comments praising Chaeguk were posted, emphasizing the prestige of the Ju family who had published the news. Chaeguk stated that without the students' help, he wouldn't have survived, while some users questioned his statement. The man in charge of the academy wondered if Chaeguk had really defeated a C-rank boss alone at his current level. He concluded that Chaeguk had been incredibly lucky and was pleased to have recruited him. He then noticed that his door was opening, revealing the 3 dungeon participants, the academy's heroes. The director invited the 3 to sit down and talk while Chaeguk felt embarrassed by the praise. The director explained that he called them to ensure they received a bonus, and also because he wanted to hear what had happened inside the dungeon. Chaeguk began by saying that, as he had stated in his report, it would have been extremely difficult without Woojin and Bak's help. Chaeguk wanted to approach the topic calmly and initially thought it was just a typical F-rank dungeon. Then he started recounting the events inside. Woojin listened with complete boredom. After hearing everything, the director found the situation very peculiar. Chaeguk continued, saying that this time he was there to accompany them, allowing them to clear the dungeon, but they needed to prepare for future anomalies. The director noticed that the student named Woojin seemed very familiar to him. He commented that Woojin's energy felt familiar and that he had been recommending strange food to students. But suddenly, the director realized that Woojin was the sect leader. The director couldn't hide his shocked expression and was immediately questioned about what was wrong. Chaeguk was confused and asked if there was a problem. Regaining his composure, the director said that he had spoken enough and that they should rest now. But he was still utterly astonished that the sect leader was there. As they left, Bake praised everyone's efforts in the dungeon, and Chaeguk suggested that she visit a hospital just in case and report her condition later. Chaeguk told Woojin to go ahead, saying he would catch up later, but before Chaeguk could leave, Woojin told him to wait a moment. Chaeguk was terrified that Woojin was about to reveal the truth after all the news reports had been published. He was genuinely afraid of this possibility. Even though Woojin had not said anything and also had no need for the boss's trophy, Woojin had remained silent in front of the reporters and showed no interest in the trophies, so Chaeguk couldn't imagine what Woojin was about to say. But all Woojin wanted was to exchange phone numbers with Chaeguk, leaving him completely stunned. Woojin asked for Chaeguk's number, saying that he would bring him another dish next time. Chaeguk was completely caught off guard after hearing that, feeling as if all his strength had left him, and he walked away without giving any response. While the spirit girl grows furious, calling him a reckless idiot and saying that the one who had defeated the dungeon boss was no longer him. Woojin reflects that people tend to notice those who are hungry first, and that he doesn't want to draw attention to himself. After everything that happened, he had obtained new ingredients and recipes, and now they would return to cooking. In Woojin's classroom, the students were questioning him about whether the news reports were true. The news was about Chaeguk's statement that he had subdued a C-rank boss, and that the help of the students was crucial. Woojin's classmates kept asking him questions, such as what it was like to see a C-rank monster in person and what his teammates were like. Woojin reflects that, for the first time, he was able to complete his daily missions thanks to Bake and Chaeguk, and was now thinking about who he would make taste his food that day. Professor Kim Jung-do enters the classroom, telling everyone that it's time for class and that they should take their seats. The professor reminds them that in the last lesson they studied labyrinth traps, while Woojin continues to think about who he will serve his food to today. The professor says he will discuss with them while they watch the practical exercises on the screen. The first participant is Han-sung. During his practical test, he appears completely lost amidst the thick smoke. The professor comments that if this were a real situation, he would already be dead, and that he should hold his breath and assess the situation. Han-sung is disappointed with his performance, but the professor reassures him that it's normal to feel frustrated. However, in real situations, he will never know what to expect. The professor starts worrying about how the students will perform in the tournament that will take place in 2 months. The Hunter Tournament is a competition where those who pass the tutorial tower showcase their abilities. Winning the tournament guarantees public recognition and the chance to enter major guilds like Celestial Wings, but the Academy has not had any standout performances in the past 10 years. The professor wonders if there is still enough time to teach the students something that could help them perform better in the tournament, and continues observing the practical training. He notices that Baek performed exceptionally well and comments that she could already be sent to the field. It was strange that she was still in the academy. Seonjun also had an outstanding performance, and the professor says that it was perfect. The professor remarks that among these students there are a few worth keeping an eye on. Next in line for evaluation is Woojin, and Seonjun pays close attention as his name is called. He reflects that Woojin is a man full of mysteries. No one knows what he is truly capable of, nor his strength, not even why he enrolled in the academy. Seonjun had been observing Woojin throughout the academy, but all he ever did was cook. He didn't expect Woojin to display his power, but as a precaution he decided to keep watching him carefully. Woojin appears to fail miserably in his test, but he does it on purpose, pulling a lever and simulating his own death. As a result, he earns 0 points, possibly the worst score in the class. The professor is so frustrated by Woojin's performance that he is left speechless. The spirit girl, outraged, exclaims that the professor should not disrespect the chief, calling him an insolent fool. Seonjun reflects that Woojin was deliberately messing up, but he couldn't understand why. In the academy's cafeteria, a few students are complaining, saying that if it weren't for that bastard, they wouldn't even be here. They continue grumbling that someone had interfered, preventing them from reaching the 3rd floor of the tower, but they pass thanks to one of their own. One of the so-called 3 useless brothers declares that he will kill that bastard the next time he sees him, and continues ranting about how he dislikes the professor's teaching methods. He recalls that the professor had mentioned they were lucky to have passed the tutorial tower with their current level of skill, and that everyone in the academy was on the same level. But while walking through the cafeteria, one of the brothers notices a rather strange dish on one of the tables. They wonder who could be eating such terrible-looking food until they realize it's Woojin, the very bastard they had been talking about. Uncomfortable, the 3 brothers sit at the same table where Woojin is eating. They are trembling with fear because they know from Woojin's reaction that he clearly remembers them, and if they make even the slightest move, they will be in big trouble. The spirit girl questions Woojin about why he is making so much noise while eating and if he knows those people. He replies that they seem familiar, but he doesn't remember where he saw them before. Then Woojin gets an idea. He decides to offer them a bite of his dish, the blue slime salad he had just prepared. One of the brothers was in disbelief and wondered if that thing was really edible. Woojin asked if that brother wasn't going to eat, while the brother saw death looming behind Woojin. The young man then decided to try the dish, saying that it wasn't like he was going to die, and that it was better than being beaten up again. After tasting it, he said his stomach felt like it was on fire, and that it was either like mouthwash or like swallowing an entire mint plant. They tried to find something good about the taste, but ended up being defeated, vomiting everything they had eaten. Woojin said he had expected this reaction from them, and that, once again, he had met people who appreciated the flavor. Woojin asked them if they were enjoying the food, but one of the brothers was about to reply that it was impossible to enjoy that. However, upon seeing Woojin's aura, he changed his words and said that it was delicious. A new professor named Lee Jung-shik introduced himself, saying that he was in charge of understanding dungeon types. The professor announced that anyone with more than 3 absences would be expelled from the class, and that paying attention to the lectures would help with the exam in 3 weeks. The students doubted the quality of the class while the professor asked if anyone had any questions before he began. The professor explained about the Gotland Station, also known as the Honey Dungeon, but warned that it was a dangerous place for novice hunters. Woojin remarked that this was a great lesson, combining both personal and systematic interest. The professor then started explaining about the dungeons of Hangi, noting that the most famous one was the Javali Westland, located on the outskirts of Wangsinmi. The spirit girl pointed out that there was a pig that was considered a delicacy, and Woojin observed that it was actually a wild boar. Woojin thought about how wild boar meat had a strong flavor, while the professor stated that the dungeon was a gold mine for E-rank hunters. The professor said that many disappearances had occurred in that dungeon, and that as long as the boars were still active, student entry was prohibited. The spirit girl lamented, saying that those pigs looked really delicious, while Woojin wondered if there was another way to get in. Then the professor mentioned that with the director's authorization, students could go there, but he did not recommend it until they gained more experience. This gave Jin an idea. He would seek out Guak Chai-yan. Now the academy director was wondering why the hell Woojin was in his office. Woojin apologized for his sudden visit, but the director told him he was free to speak comfortably, and asked what brought him there. At first, the director thought it was something about the Assassin Bee dungeon, but he quickly dismissed the idea, since Woojin was just a cadet with no notable skills in the tests. Yet the more he looked at Woojin, the more he was reminded of the sect leader. But suddenly, the director sensed an energy coming from Woojin, and he immediately recalled feeling that same energy from the sect leader. He was astonished and asked where Woojin had learned that martial art. Woojin said that when he was young, he went on a trip to Mount Baekdu, but he had an accident and got trapped there. He entered a cave, found a chest with old books, and out of curiosity, he read about martial arts from them. The academy director then concluded that the sect leader must have left a book on Mount Baekdu instead of Mount Tanshan. The director recalled how the sect leader had lamented that his followers had not realized this, assuming that he had been disappointed that they did not follow his teachings. However, the director still did not understand why the leader had left a book on Mount Baekdu. Then he concluded that based on Woojin's energy, there was a possibility that this story was true. Directly confronting Woojin, Wax said that he seemed very confident and asked how he knew that the director would recognize his aura the moment he released it. Woojin thought that the director's meticulous nature was still the same, so he told him that the book contained information about a person called the Blood Demon. Woojin commented that the book was very detailed and assumed that the director had learned martial arts from it. The director, now more hostile, questioned if he could really learn just by reading. Woojin replied that the book had been written very well. The director assumed that the sect leader was never the type to do things on whim, so he must have written the book with great detail, making it necessary for him to hear more. Then the director asked Woojin if that was the only reason he had sought him out, to tell him this. Without wasting any time, Woojin requested permission from the director to enter the Javali Westland dungeon. The director responds that normally that dungeon is not allowed, but given the martial art Woojin had learned, he would make an exception. The director asks Woojin to tell him more about the book because he found it intriguing, but he suggests that Woojin return the next day since it was getting late. Woojin says he understands, and then the director asks who he plans to go to the dungeon with. On top of a building, Chaeguk was reporting the events to his leader. His family leader, Ju Jung-myung, acknowledged the report and told Chaeguk to leave now. As Chaeguk was leaving the room, the leader remarked that he had done a good job, so Chaeguk thanked him and exited. Outside the room, he jumped with joy, celebrating the fact that the family leader had recognized him. Chaeguk says that the leader is a man of few words and never praises anyone, but now Chaeguk had plenty of free time and was planning to go to a bar. But before that, he receives a message from Woojin inviting him to the Boar dungeon in Wasteland. Chaeguk bites his nails, wondering how he should explain this. Then he remembers seeing something about that dungeon in one of the rule books. He checks the academy's rulebook, and there it is, the dungeon. He recalls that he had really wanted to go there before, but he couldn't without a permission letter. Chaeguk remembers that entering dungeons requires a team of 3 members and that Xiaohe's family wouldn't allow her to go since she was still recovering from her injuries. With a smile on his face, Chaeguk says there's no way they could go because the regulations were blocking them. After replying to Woojin, telling him that they needed permission, he thinks to himself that now he can finally relax with a drink and remarks that Woojin is being too clingy. But then Woojin replies, saying that they would meet at 9 in the morning the next day and attaches an image of the permission granted by the director. The hunters who usually go to that dungeon are low-ranked ones who had fled from the front line. They go there for iron ore, which is popular due to its strong mana sensitivity and high durability. C rank and D rank hunters, and even some B ranks, typically use weapons made from iron ore. So mining iron ore provides good earnings, making that place crowded with hunters trying to gather resources. Chaeguk reflects that Woojin has exceptional skills, but doesn't understand why he is there if he is after minerals. Chaeguk notices that since they entered the dungeon, the only thing Woojin had done was collect plants. Chaeguk calls out to Woojin and tells him that, as far as he knows, the iron mine is a bit more to the southeast, assuming that Woojin is there to mine minerals. But Woojin denies it, which only confuses Chaeguk even more about why Woojin came to this dungeon. Woojin then reveals that he didn't even know there was a mining area here, surprising Chaeguk that he was unaware of such a thing. Chaeguk tries to understand why Woojin would be there if not for the iron, but as he speaks, Woojin suddenly disappears before his eyes. Chaeguk immediately takes off running after him, but he comments that despite appearing to walk normally, Woojin was far faster than him. After running for a long time and exhausting himself, Chaeguk finally catches up to Woojin, still questioning why that bastard was even here. Woojin picks up a cactus and remarks that it looks edible, while Chaeguk watches in shock as he smiles at the cactus. After exploring the dungeon, Woojin opens his cooking menu and concludes that just as the Slime King's recipe utilized slime properties, this cactus might also be useful. Chaeguk approaches Woojin, asking why he came to this dungeon, but Woojin instead asks him where the cactus came from. Frustrated, Chaeguk responds that it comes from the iron mine he mentioned earlier. Now losing his patience, Chaeguk tells him that he's been saying all along that it's in the southeast direction. Just as Chaeguk is about to scold Woojin, he has already run far away before Chaeguk can even finish his sentence. Completely exhausted from running, Chaeguk observes that Woojin covered a 40-minute distance in just 5 minutes and was still perfectly fine. They arrive at the iron mine, and Chaeguk wonders why Woojin, with his abilities, chose to join the Hunter Academy when he could be accepted anywhere. Before they enter the mine, a miner is seen coming out, mentioning that there was a child in the way, referring to Woojin. And right after that, he says that this is no place for idiots like him. He said he was already overwhelmed with all the people who had gone mining, and now he had to deal with kids like them. Becoming even more hostile toward Woojin, he asked what he was doing and why he wasn't leaving already. A miner's partner recognized Kim Chaeguk standing next to Woojin and wondered why he was there since he could afford to buy tons of iron ore. Kim Chaeguk, intimidated by the shift in atmosphere, asked Woojin to explain. Chaeguk and the miner greeted and introduced themselves, with the miner saying it was nothing special. He was just explaining the procedures to Chaeguk's companion. The miner said he was concerned because the mine was dangerous and that he was being strict because Chaeguk's companion could get hurt inside. He explained that he believed this was simply his duty as a human and told Chaeguk to finish clearing the mine quickly. Then, the miner invited them to enter the mine while Chaeguk thanked everyone for their kindness. The miners grumbled, saying they already had enough workers for the day, and one of them questioned if it was really okay to let Woojin and Chaeguk enter. Then the head miner said that they would probably come back empty-handed without mining anything. As Woojin and Chaeguk moved forward, they discussed which of the 3 paths to take, deciding that the deeper they went, the better the quality of the minerals they would find. Chaeguk commented that even though people tended to pick fights with Jin, they changed their attitude as soon as they saw him. The spirit girl mentioned that this must be the place the miners talked about, where many high-quality minerals were located. But suddenly, Chaeguk remembered something and pointed out that they had not brought any mining equipment. Woojin then had the idea of mining the ores with his sword. However, Chaeguk quickly warned him that they needed professional equipment. While Chaeguk insisted that not even the gear provided by the academy would be enough, Woojin casually sliced off a chunk of ore with his sword. After picking up the piece he had cut, he exclaimed that this should be good enough. Chaeguk, watching the scene, was horrified, wondering why Woojin was cutting through the ore like that. Woojin declared that they were already done there, while Chaeguk questioned whether Jin was really human. As they were leaving, the miners asked if they had finished already, and Kim confirmed that their work was done. The miners whispered behind their backs, saying they had expected them to leave empty-handed and that no one should expect much from a B-rank hunter. Outside the cave, Chaeguk was left speechless upon seeing that Woojin was cooking at that moment. As Woojin prepared his cactus, he commented that the juice wasn't bad, but the flavor was too bland and still not good enough. Then he got the idea to make a slime sauce. He started by burning the slime sauce, then chopped peppers and onions, throwing them into the pan. Just as he imagined, after adding a spicy flavor, the dish became much more delicious. Woojin's cooking system announced that he had gained experience, created a dish of extreme quality, and that it was imbued with dungeon energy. The term dungeon energy caught Woojin's attention. The spirit girl reappeared, celebrating that the chief had successfully cooked a dish surpassing A-grade quality, saying she knew he was capable of doing it. She continued explaining that dishes surpassing A-grade were imbued with dungeon energy and granted special effects to those who ate them. Woojin confirmed that what the spirit said was true, as he had received an effect that increased his strength for 24 hours. Woojin decided to offer the cactus dish to the instructor. The instructor looked at Jin's dish with disdain, wondering if it was even edible. But recalling the last dish Jin had made, he admitted that this one looked more normal than usual. Still hesitant to eat it, the instructor wondered if cactus could actually be grilled and eaten, but since Jin had already tasted it, he figured it should be fine. However, as soon as he put a piece in his mouth, he felt a strong urge to vomit, questioning what kind of flavor that was. While feeling disgusted by the food, he recalled hearing that cactus had a refreshing and spicy taste, but the texture reminded him of avocado. Struggling to chew, the instructor complained that, with each bite, his mouth felt like it was turning into a pot of oil. Suddenly, Jin handed Chaeguk a jar of sauce, saying he could mix it with the rest of the food. Chaeguk had faith that the sauce would improve the flavor of everything, but as soon as he put it in his mouth, he was immediately overcome by a spicy flavor. After experiencing horrible sensations, the instructor falls to the ground, saying it was delicious, and Woojin is happy that he appreciates the cuisine. While Chaeguk is lying down, he notices a notification informing him that his strength has increased by 3 points for 24 hours. He is astonished upon realizing that his stats have increased just like the last time he ate what Jin cooked, but this time, the effect lasts for 24 hours. Chaeguk finally understands that Jin was not mocking him, and that dungeon food was not meant to be a last resort. But suddenly, he feels his body shaking and thinks it's an earthquake. Immediately after, the miners scream for everyone to run because wild boars are approaching. Chaeguk prepares for battle, saying that boars are not difficult to hunt, but what makes them dangerous is their habit of moving in herds. As the boars draw closer, Chaeguk says that if he were alone, he would have avoided them, but with Woojin there, he does not fear the danger. Thus, he charges at them, using his spear to attack. He slashes the boars easily but notices that they are dwindling slowly and that if Woojin had gathered them, it would have been easier. But just when Chaeguk is about to call Jin's attention so he can fight properly, he can't spot him. Chaeguk concludes that Woojin has been carried away by the boar herd, but then a sinister aura whispers in his ear, criticizing the excessive flourish in his spear technique. Trying to figure out where the voice came from, Chaeguk notices that Woojin is standing atop a mountain. He wonders how Woojin got there so quickly. Woojin says that the opponents are merely beasts and that swinging a spear as if fighting humans is useless. But Chaeguk doesn't understand how Woojin is speaking from such a distance while Woojin tells him to focus. A boar is already behind him, ready to strike. But without difficulty, Chaeguk eliminates it while Woojin continues observing. Woojin thinks to himself that Chaeguk is the only person in the world who appreciates his cooking, so this is the only way to repay his favors. Woojin decides that he will impart invaluable teachings that Chaeguk couldn't buy even with his fortune. But Chaeguk gets irritated because Woojin is suddenly speaking informally to him and giving him advice after running away. While the miners' leader watches the fight, he comments that, as always, everyone ran into the mine, and that if Kim Chaeguk defeats the boars, they will have all the iron. But the miner also observes that Chaeguk is not living up to his reputation and wonders why he is not fighting better. The miner also notices that Chaeguk's disciple had run off earlier. Woojin corrects Chaeguk again, saying that his center of gravity is too far off and that he is wasting unnecessary energy. Woojin's attitude irritates Chaeguk with all the lecturing he is doing without lifting a finger. Woojin meticulously observes Chaeguk's every movement and tells him to use his body more efficiently because he is expending too much energy with each spear strike. Looking more closely, Woojin realizes that Chaeguk's movements are flashy but lack conciseness. Chaeguk grows increasingly furious at Woojin's attitude while he continues slicing the boars in half. Woojin reprimands Chaeguk once more, saying that he is moving excessively and putting too much emotion into his spear. Chaeguk is already exhausted from the fight, and when he looks around, he sees himself surrounded by boars. He comments that they never end, but without injuries, he is unsure how long he will last. Woojin has assessed Chaeguk's level and realizes that he is a slow learner. Woojin draws his sword and launches an attack from atop the mountain toward the boars. Chaeguk senses a considerable energy, and before he can react, a devastating attack covers the area, dealing massive damage to multiple boars. Chaeguk is astonished by Woojin's ability to unleash a sword attack from such a distance, so he assumes Woojin might be rank S. Before he realizes it, Woojin is already beside him, confirming in his mind that Woojin's abilities are beyond comparison to his own. The miner watching comments that Chaeguk was struggling in the battle, but suddenly, something happened. He believes that Chaeguk wiped out all the boars in an instant. The miner says he has worked with many rank B hunters in the past, but none were as impressive as Chaeguk. He surpassed them all until the miner concludes that Chaeguk was hiding his true strength. Suddenly, a warning window appears for all three of them, informing them that the boss is enraged by the massacre of the boar herd, and then it appears. And suddenly, Chaeguk and Woojin were face to face with the boss of the Wasteland Dungeon. To show its fury, the boss let out a roar, creating a tense atmosphere in the area. As soon as Chaeguk realized the boss was about to attack, he shouted for Woojin to stay behind him. While Chaeguk was preparing, he declared that he wouldn't lose so easily this time, but just as the boar was about to strike, Woojin stepped in front and took it down with a single blow. Chaeguk was stunned, watching everything unfold, unable to believe what had just happened. As Woojin was already sheathing his sword, Chaeguk remarked that he hadn't even seen him draw it. The miner who had been watching said he hadn't even seen the spear move and wondered if such a thing was even possible. He then concluded that Kim Chaeguk must be a god. The miner assumed that Chaeguk and his disciple trained alone to avoid drawing attention, but he feared they might do something to him if they realized he had witnessed everything. Thus, he presumed he was 100% doomed, as people died in dungeons every day. The miner continued observing, noting that Chaeguk seemed like a good person, sacrificing himself for his disciple, but he wondered if he was only that kind to his disciple. Fearing being discovered, the miner ran back into the cave to hide. Woojin noticed that the miner's presence had vanished, and he commented that it was a shame since he had planned to offer him a portion of his dish. Woojin mentioned that unlike the skilled assassin, the boss of this dungeon hadn't dropped any equipment. The spirit girl was pleased because she had managed to obtain high-quality meat from the dungeon boss. Woojin stated that a true cook must know how to satisfy the hungry and noted that the dungeon would close in 6 hours, warning that they couldn't waste time. Chaeguk lamented that they were broke this time due to the monster's drops. Chaeguk assumed that Woojin would use the monster's internal cores for cooking and speculated that they might have special effects like last time. But then he also remembered that he would have to eat that horrible and disgusting food. Chaeguk reflected on how the boss's internal core was worth 300 million, weighing whether he should experience a 300 million worth disgusting meal or quietly escape. He thought that the latter option seemed better, but it made no economic sense. So Chaeguk asked Woojin if they should just wait for the dungeon's exit to open. However, Woojin paid no attention and was only thinking about what kind of dish he could make with the boss's remains. As Woojin began cutting all of the boss's meat, Chaeguk observed that his knife skills were comparable to those in a manga. Therefore, Chaeguk wondered what kind of monstrous dish Woojin would create this time. Woojin then noticed that Chaeguk was watching him cook intently and asked if he was excited about his cooking. Chaeguk replied with an ironic tone, tears in his eyes, that yes, he was. The instructor asked Woojin if he was going to cook now. Chaeguk mentioned that he had eaten grilled cactus earlier and still hadn't digested it. Woojin then said they needed to stay there for another 6 hours. Chaeguk confirmed, stating that it was because the boss had appeared. Woojin then said they would remain there until dinner, meaning Chaeguk had already missed lunch. While Chaeguk complained about the dungeon rules, the spirit girl asked Woojin if he had finished cutting the meat and complimented his knife skills. Woojin asked the spirit girl for a frying pan to grill the meat and test its flavor, as he wanted to check if it was properly cooked before eating it. After finishing grilling the meat, he started wondering what it would taste like. As he chewed the meat, Woojin commented that, as expected from dungeon ingredients, the texture was quite different. It was crunchy and reminded him of fruit. Woojin didn't find anything particularly special about the meat aside from its crunchy texture, but he did enjoy its wild and meaty aroma. After reflecting, Woojin said it would be a great idea to make a pork dish called fried pork and sauce. The spirit girl was surprised by the idea of making fried pork and sauce, confident that it would turn out well, but she wondered how Woojin would manage to prepare it. Woojin told the spirit girl that she would see for herself and asked for a steamer. Woojin explained that it was important to attach the cactus to the pork, place them in the steamer, and then add ingredients from his inventory. Chaeguk watched as Woojin added star anise and peppers to the food and assumed he was trying to make fried pork and sauce. Reflecting a little more, Chaeguk thought that since Woojin was cooking actual meat this time, he couldn't possibly fail, even if it was Woojin making the dish. But soon, Chaeguk concludes that Woojin will fail again after seeing that he added cactus to the fried pork and sauce. Saying that he underestimated it, Woojin realizes that simply steaming the cactus along with the meat was not enough and comes up with the idea of grilling both with iron ore. Thus he concludes that the flavor of the meat would be doubled. Chaeguk says the smell is horrible, wondering how the oil could smell like rotten avocados. Woojin comments that after taking the grilled meat out, he will add soy sauce and rice wine before cooking it further. The spirit girl starts yelling, saying she can't wait any longer after smelling that delicious aroma in the air. Woojin responds that it will take at least 3 more hours, while the spirit girl exclaims that this is torture, having to endure that heavenly smell for so long. Chaeguk, who is watching, notices that Woojin is enjoying himself and decides to get some sleep while he cooks. Some time passes and the food is finally ready, so Woojin decides to check its flavor. After tasting it, he says that he added the boss's internal core, but it was milder than he expected. So he decides to compensate for the lack of flavor with the venom of queen bees. After that, he says the food is almost ready while Chaeguk has nightmares, seemingly about Woojin. The spirit girl notices that Chaeguk is making strange movements in his sleep and wonders what he is dreaming about, as he looks very scared. Woojin says it's almost done but needs to wait for the perfect moment to remove the pork. With his senses, Woojin decides that the right moment is now, so he lifts the lid off the pot, releasing a massive cloud of steam. And there it is, the fully prepared pork. The notification windows from his cooking system appear, giving him details about the dish, revealing that it is of A+ quality. After that, Chaeguk wakes up in terror, screaming that Woojin was trying to make him eat a beehive while crying. But Chaeguk snaps back to reality, thanking God that it was just a dream. He wonders if he would be in trouble if that had been real. However, after seeing the dish that Woojin had prepared, he slaps himself in the face to wake up from a dream. But he feels the pain and realizes that this is not a dream. Woojin invites Chaeguk to eat while it's hot, and Chaeguk tells himself that he can never escape Woojin. Chaeguk tries to stay calm, telling himself that despite the horrible taste, his stats always increased after eating. And this time would be no different. He remembers the last dish Woojin made for him and notes that this one looks much better. From Chaeguk's perspective, Woojin is emanating a terrifying aura, and he thinks that if he doesn't eat, he will be killed. Once again, Chaeguk tells himself that since this time is meat, it should be better than eating cactus. But as soon as he stabs the meat with his fork, he feels that it is crunchy and realizes that something is not right. He questions why the meat is making a crunchy sound when fried pork and sauce is supposed to have a soft texture. But he thinks to himself that there is no time to question it, he must eat to survive. Desperate, he puts a piece into his mouth, hoping it will have a special effect like last time. But he is immediately shocked by an extremely salty flavor. Chaeguk compares the meat, saying that it is saltier than seawater and wonders why the flavor is so intense despite Woojin having added pepper. Chaeguk comments that it feels like having multiple boars in his mouth and questions why it is both crunchy and has the texture of spoiled jelly. After that, he compares this meal to a curse, the final curse of the Wasteland Dungeon. But before all hope is lost, a notification appears for Chaeguk, stating that he has consumed the boss's internal core and that his overall health has increased by 4 levels. Another notification states that after consuming the boss's meat, his resistance has slightly increased. Chaeguk is astonished by his rising stats. He says that for a rank B, even increasing by 1 level is very difficult, and that gaining resistance requires tremendous effort and a massive amount of money. Chaeguk concludes that if this were made public, many hunters would gather there. But he also says that there is a limit to all of this, because the taste is so horrendous that dying would be preferable. Outside the Wasteland Dungeon, many people are waiting. One of them says that, as expected, following Chaeguk was their best move. This young man says that for 3 years he had been walking on eggshells and having no luck at all. But thanks to his career as a reporter, he began gaining recognition after obtaining an exclusive story about the Killer Bee Dungeon. Many people commented that Chaeguk was skilled for having encountered dungeon bosses twice and wondered if he would be able to defeat this one as well. But suddenly, the portal entrance opened and someone stepped out. To everyone's surprise, it was one of the miners, saying that he thought he was going to die in there. As soon as the miner came out, he was shocked by the number of people waiting outside the portal. The reporter was surprised to see the miner emerge and tried to recall his name. After remembering, the miner asked why he knew his name. Many excited reporters swarmed the miner, asking if he had seen King Chaeguk in the dungeon and what had happened inside. After being bombarded with questions about Chaeguk's safety, he told them to calm down because he would tell them exactly what he saw inside the dungeon. Then he gave a report stating that he had seen King Chaeguk inside the dungeon and claimed that he was an A-rank hunter who had been hiding his true strength. So as soon as King Chaeguk and Jin stepped out of the portal, Chaeguk wondered why there were so many people there. Many news stories about Kim Chaeguk were appearing on various news sites. Some users were ecstatic, saying that finally an S-rank hunter had appeared in their country and that Chaeguk was truly incredible. Each news headline was more sensational than the last, claiming that Chaeguk had cleared the boar dungeon alone and that he was among the top 1% of hunters. The reporters remained excited, asking Chaeguk what had happened inside the dungeon and if he had known in advance that a high-level boss would appear. Chaeguk asked them to calm down and ask their questions one at a time because he would answer each one individually. Then he apologized, saying that some questions were difficult to answer at that moment. Chaeguk then began explaining the events of the dungeon to the reporters. Woojin noticed that Chaeguk was incredible at answering the questions because he managed to dodge them like an art form. Afterward, Chaeguk celebrated, proud that he had skillfully evaded the inquiries. He walked past the clueless interviewers, thinking that even if all this absurdity were true, he would never reveal it there. More questions kept coming at Chaeguk, but he said he understood how everyone felt. Chae-eon pointed out that during the dungeon exploration, he and his companion had been caught in an accident, but Woojin demonstrated incredible control and helped them a lot. He added that without Woojin, it wouldn't have been easy to clear the dungeon. Chaeguk stated that as a temporary instructor, he had to be responsible for his students, but the reporters didn't understand what he meant by that last sentence. Then Chaeguk said that to protect Jin, he would end the interviews at that moment. Regarding Lee Cheonki, the director, there were 3 major events that changed his life in the demonic sect. The first was when he became a member of the demonic sect. The second was when he became a subordinate of the celestial demon of the sect. The number of experiences he had made him stronger. The former celestial demon asked him if he had ever thought that the dish for Joji could be better, but the celestial demon continued, suggesting that the dish would improve if it had a stronger aroma. After that, it would also taste better. And so, the former celestial demon began frantically cooking the mysterious dish. Chae-eon was impressed to see that the celestial demon had managed to use martial arts in his daily life, which made him fascinating. The celestial demon finished his dish, saying that he thought it would be better with cilantro and sea squirts. Chae-eon tasted the dish and said that the peppers and cilantro were clashing, while the sea squirts balanced the flavors, questioning the strange taste. Then, the former celestial demon asked how the dish was. Chai-eon thought that he couldn't disappoint him since the dish had been made especially for him. So he responded enthusiastically that it was absolutely perfect, thinking to himself that he should smile to avoid disappointing him. But after Chai-eon said that the celestial demon's food was great, everything changed, and he never stopped cooking. Over time, the destructive power of his dishes increased, leading to bolder creations like tofu with a pork aroma. The celestial demon kept seeking out Chai-eon to have him taste his dishes, but Chai-eon didn't like that one bit. Then, one day, Chai-eon was determined to tell the celestial demon the truth, saying that his food wasn't good and asking him if he wanted to stop. But while Chai-eon was reflecting, the celestial demon found him and told him that he had prepared a dish of sour pork with seafood just for him. However, Chai-eon was already fed up with so many meals and moral dilemmas. One day, Chai-eon was deep in thought, realizing that it was already clear that the sect leader had surpassed even the deadly poisons of the Tang clan, and if he continued eating his food, he would suffer severe losses in IQ. He thought to himself that he owed this favor to the celestial demon and didn't want to lead the sect, but it seemed that the heavens were testing him. Suddenly, Chai-eon had an idea and began to open a massive gate. He then decided to abandon his physical body and become immortal, thus transcending reality. He truly believed that the realm of immortals he had long aspired to was now before his eyes. But before it could become reality, a divine being judged Chai-eon as a scoundrel, saying that he would never become immortal and enter the realm after killing so many people. The divine entity banished Chai-eon forever from the divine realm. Suddenly, he was reborn on Earth as a baby, and in front of him was his mother feeding him. However, there was something he liked about that world. He said that the sushi there was of top quality. As he ate, he remembered the sect leader. Chai-eon reflects that there was no way Woojin could have defeated a rank C boss alone. But on the other hand, Woojin had inherited the martial arts of the sect master, so if he had properly forged them, he might be capable of doing it. Chai-eon wonders why Woojin is hiding his power but decides to ask him when he comes to his office. Suddenly, there was Woojin inside the director's office, bowing to him. The director tells Woojin not to speak so formally and to feel more comfortable, as they were fellow alumni. As relaxed as always, the director asks why Woojin is so tense and tells him to speak casually, assuring him that he is an open-minded person. Chai-eon thinks that children these days open up more when an adult approaches them and that they really lack good manners. Chai-eon notices that Woojin does not seem curious about them being former classmates, understanding that it must be difficult to talk to someone older, even if he is curious. So he continues, saying that he will explain step by step, starting with the martial arts he has learned. He states that the martial art he practices is called Blood Demon Arts, and that the founder of this martial art was known as the Blood Demon. The martial art that Woojin practices was founded by a person called the Celestial Demon. Chai-eon says that the Celestial Demon was a person with strong ideals and the power to realize them. The Blood Demon, who coincidentally met the Celestial Demon, was impressed by his ideals and offered to become his subordinate. Chai-eon says that the path of the Celestial Demon was alluring, but the Blood Demon was more qualified, while Woojin was already growing tired of the conversation. Laughing heartily, Chai-eon says that they were fellow alumni, and that Woojin should not try to compete with him. Wack comments that the martial arts of the Celestial Demon granted enlightenment just by being witnessed, yet disciples still preferred the blood arts. Woojin, already exhausted from listening, thinks to himself that Chai-eon's statements are outrageous and almost too ridiculous to deal with. Then Chai-eon reveals that now that he is older, his curiosity has only grown, and he would like to learn the martial arts of the Celestial Demon that Woojin has mastered. Chai-eon proposes to teach Woojin the Blood Demon arts in exchange for his knowledge, but feels that he is at a disadvantage in the trade. At that moment, Woojin adopts a more serious demeanor and says that he understands the absurdity of everything Chai-eon has been saying and that his ultimate goal is clearly the Celestial Demon's martial arts. Woojin states that he understands the desire to obtain his martial arts since it is something everyone in the Central Plains would love to have. But Chai-eon is deceiving himself with lies and romanticizing his past. This is a habit he must break. Then Woojin stands up and begins to emanate a dark aura, making the atmosphere heavy. Chai-eon is terrified by the immense power radiating from Woojin. After this, Woojin reveals that he recognizes the director as Wack Chai-eon, causing the director to tremble in fear as he acknowledges the sect leader. Woojin starts antagonizing Chai-eon by saying that the Blood Demon arts were stronger than the celestial arts, even though not even he believed that. Chai-eon begins apologizing, saying that he never truly thought that way from the start and that Woojin had to believe him. But Woojin continued to intimidate him, saying that was exactly what he had said. However, Chai-eon kept apologizing, saying that he had been tempted by the rumor of a book, that a fool had tried to deceive him, and that he was ready to accept his punishment. Chai-eon began begging for the sect master's forgiveness. Then Woojin calmed down and said that it was enough, as Chai-eon had recognized his mistake, and he would let it go this time. Chai-eon thanked the sect leader, but Woojin said that his previous behavior had been disrespectful. Now he needed to relax. Woojin instructed Chai-eon to sit down so they could finish their conversation. Woojin mentioned that the blood demon had claimed he would ascend and disappear, and the director confirmed that he had been rejected by the immortals due to bad luck. Woojin recalled that the celestial deities had attributed 30% of his sins to the demonic cult and the rest to crimes against cooking. Woojin was so lost in thought that Chai-eon had to bring him back to reality. He then wondered what kind of memory he had just recalled. Woojin repeated that if Chai-eon hadn't lied, he wouldn't have revealed his identity, and once again, Chai-eon apologized, saying that greed had blinded him. Woojin repeated that he would let it go, and that he didn't want to talk about it anymore. Chai-eon noticed that Woojin was very satisfied with the current world and feared that he might dream of a world dominated by demons. After that, Woojin asked Chai-eon if he had free time to eat together and told him that he would cook for him. Chai-eon was completely shocked upon hearing that Woojin would cook for him, rendered speechless. Chai-eon argued that the master's dishes should only be served to those who made contributions to the sect, and that, due to his sins, he shouldn't eat them. But Woojin responded that this was only the case within the sect, and now they were in the Hunter Academy. Then Woojin enthusiastically exclaimed that his cooking skills had improved a lot since then, and that Chai-eon could look forward to it. Chai-eon complained that he had tried to ascend just to avoid Woojin's food, but now he would have to eat it again. He wished that his companions, Hwangma or Chaema, were there with him so he wouldn't have to deal with this alone. But suddenly, he remembered that the people from the sect who used to eat with him were no longer there, not even the elders who had taken over his home. Then he realized that he would have to deal with the sect master's cooking all by himself. He reflected that even if the master's cooking had improved, that only meant that his food had become even stranger and more terrible. Suddenly, a mysterious figure informed his servant that the Killer Bee and Boar bosses they had been hunting had been defeated by Kim Chi-guk, a rank B. Then he decided to ask his servant, Park Sungjin, a question. He asked whether the boy thought Kim Chi-guk was a skilled enough hunter to handle all of that. The boy replied that he didn't think Kim Chi-guk was capable of such a feat, but admitted that he had some talent, though he was still considered just a rank B at best. The man stated that Kim Chi-guk had only reached rank B with the support of the Zhu clan, and wasn't strong enough to attract the attention of the organization's higher-ups. The boy continued, saying that even if Kim Chi-guk had gotten lucky and managed to take down the boss, he wouldn't have had the necessary information to track it down in the first place. Then the man ordered that Kim Chi-guk be placed on the watch list and instructed them to monitor him, demanding that any developments be reported immediately. He said that everything was part of the Eclipse's grand plan and then suddenly disappeared from the room. The boy who had been in the room was left tense and sweating as he added Kim Chi-guk to his watch list. At the Hunter Academy, Baek lamented that because of the Killer Bee incident, she wasn't able to go anywhere. Her father told her that it was dangerous outside, but she found it all to be excessive. Then she revealed that, in the first place, she had only joined the academy to escape her overprotective father. Whenever she got even the slightest injury, he would do everything possible to take care of her, immediately calling all available hunter doctors. Even a small scratch on her knee was enough for her father to make a big fuss. According to him, she would have to spend the rest of the afternoon at home recovering. Then Baek was reading the news about Kim Chi-guk and was impressed. The article stated that Chi-guk was actually a hidden rank A. Then she realized that over the weekend, Chi-guk and Woojin had continued exploring low-level dungeons, and she became irritated that she hadn't heard anything about it. She felt upset because they were a team, and neither of them even considered asking her. But she wondered why Chi-guk was so focused on Woojin when, to her, Woojin seemed like just a diligent and ordinary hunter. She questioned whether Woojin was really his disciple, or if he was just interested in his cooking. Supposing that this could be possible, she thought that after Chi-guk tasted his cooking, he might have been moved and was now searching for him. Baek remembered that that meal was unique because, after all, it was the one that had revived her entire sense of taste. Recalling the sensation as if electricity was coursing through her tongue, she compared it to what people called delicious. Baek had tried all kinds of food, but had never experienced anything like that again. So she decided that she had to confirm it, determined to find Woojin and taste his cooking again. Then she said that, whether she liked it or not, Woojin was truly special. Siu Baek observed Woojin in class while the professor explained that the more one ventured into dungeons, the more their mana increased. Baek noticed that Woojin was deeply focused on his studies. After that, she started running, realizing she was 20 minutes late for lunch. She remembered that since returning from the Killer Bee dungeon, all the questions directed at her had been significantly delayed. So she continued searching for Woojin at lunchtime. In the cafeteria, the students whispered that Chae-guk was right there, and that he was with Woo Jin, meaning the rumors were true, but they wondered why they were together. The students said that since Woo Jin was Kim Chae-guk's disciple, it wasn't surprising that they were together, but considering Kim Chae-guk's personality, it was questionable. While Chae-guk was eating Woo Jin's meal against his will, he told himself that it was absolutely horrible. He said the steak had a bitter and spicy taste and that his stomach hurt. Meanwhile, the students sitting near Woo Jin's table muttered that they should never get close to his table because of the awful smell. Then finally Baek-seol found Woo Jin at lunch. Woo Jin greeted her and asked if she was feeling better. She replied that she was and thanked him. Without wasting time, Woo Jin said he was happy to hear that and offered her a piece of his meal, which she gladly accepted. Chae-guk, already fed up with everything, just watched, questioning Baek's sanity because she was about to eat Woo Jin's food. As she was about to take a bite, all the students eagerly awaited her reaction, and as soon as she tasted the meal, she entered a state of bliss, exclaiming that it was just as she expected. Woo Jin's food was simply delicious. Chae-guk fell into complete shock, unable to comprehend why this was happening. Baek-seol made an observation, noting that the food this time was different. To her, it was a bit weaker. Trying to clarify, she said it was milder. She added that the food made in the Killer Bee dungeon had felt like it was stinging her tongue, whereas now, it felt as if a pig was gently scratching her with its hooves. But she noticed that Chae-guk seemed to be enjoying it, so she assumed that it wasn't bad for everyone. It was just a matter of taste. Baek-seol stood up, thanked Woo Jin for the meal, and asked if he could cook for her again. He responded that he would. The students observed Baek's actions, wondering if Woo Jin's food was really good since the whole scene looked like a crime scene. They then concluded that, seeing Kim Chae-guk devouring the food, it might not be so bad after all. After that, the spirit girl appeared, saying that there were more people who appreciated the chef's cooking. Woo Jin then said that this made him very happy. He recalled that in his past, many people loved his food, but none of them ever asked to eat it again. He remembered how unfortunate it was that even though they savored his dishes, they were too intimidated by the celestial demon's reputation to utter a single word. He said that he was glad that wasn't the case in this reality, but suddenly he felt a different aura. Woo Jin noted that the person was hiding their aura extremely well, and if he were an ordinary person, he wouldn't have noticed. And inside the gymnasium, there was Seong-jun, training with a wooden sword. Woo Jin was impressed to see that he was training against virtual enemies once again. Watching carefully, Woo Jin noticed that the enemies Seong-jun faced wielded spears, swords, bows, and much more. There were even beasts and monsters among them. Woo Jin made a comparison, saying that Seong-jun was preparing for war, as he was battling countless enemies all on his own. Woo Jin commented that in the tutorial tower, he had only seen the end of his fight, but after watching him give it his all, things became much clearer. He finally realized that Seong-jun's martial arts were incredible and impressive. Determined, Woo Jin decided to leave that place, saying that it was rude to watch someone train for too long. So he resolved to head to the dormitory. But before that, the spirit girl told him to wait and look at something she found interesting. The spirit girl pointed to a poster about the Hunter tournament. Woo Jin had the impression that he had heard about this tournament before but couldn't remember where. He assumed he must have heard about it during a class. The Hunter tournament was exclusively for beginner hunters with less than a year of experience. It was held annually in different formats, making it popular among the general public. Hunters who performed well in the tournament had the chance to establish their value in the market and gain fame. The ultimate reward was eligibility to compete in the World Hunter Tournament. In Korea, only the top 4 competitors received this opportunity. Woo Jin commented that he was impressed with the rewards, but he had no interest in participating. The spirit girl noticed that among the prizes, there was something called mandrake, which caught Woo Jin's attention. Woo Jin said he had heard that it was a rare plant with a great reputation, and the spirit girl added that it was a mystical plant. She continued, saying that a 10-year-old mandrake was delicious even when eaten raw, and Woo Jin reflected on its flavor. She stated that without a doubt, mandrake was incredible in every way, even in its aroma, and that no other plant could compare to it. Mandrake was slightly bitter and enhanced flavors, making it perfect for any dish, even grilled, and it could even serve as a main course for dinner. But Woo Jin revealed that he would not participate in this tournament, and the spirit girl questioned him, saying that he had the skills to reach the top. Woo Jin said that those at the top had responsibilities, and he didn't want to lose his cooking time. He added that the tournament was a major event that would bring a lot of attention to him, so he preferred to keep cooking without unnecessary trouble. The spirit girl said that Woo Jin was solemnly devoted to cooking, and that he seemed like a monk. Even though she already knew this, she became emotional. But suddenly, Woo Jin received a call from Gwak Chi-eun. Chi-eun asked if the sect leader was available to talk, and Woo Jin asked what was wrong. Gwak said that he had important matters to discuss with Woo Jin, and that if he had time, he would stop by his room. Woo Jin was infuriated that Chi-eun didn't understand the rules of this world and told him that if he went to his room, it would seem very strange to others. So Woojin decided that he would meet Guak Chi-eon himself. He added that around dinner, he would bring food to Guak and meet him in person. Upon hearing this, Guak Chi-eon panicked, but before he could say anything, Woojin hung up the phone. Woojin could hear Guak Chi-eon yelling from the building next door, so he assumed that Guak was so excited about his cooking that he was making a big fuss. At dinner, Woojin told Chi-eon that after much thought, he had managed to balance the flavor by adding mint to the dish he had received from the Killer Bee dungeon. Upon tasting the meal, Guak Chi-eon said that it reminded him of times when blood and flesh were spilled across the ground. After that, Woojin asked Guak if he was enjoying it, and he confirmed that it was delicious, a flavor worthy of the sect leader. Then, after they finished eating, Woojin said they should get straight to the point and asked what Guak wanted to talk to him about. Guak Chi-eon asked if Woojin had been looking at the notice boards around the school. Woojin immediately asked if he was talking about the tournament, and Guak confirmed that he was. Guak continued, saying that the academy hadn't had decent results in the last decade, and Woojin already expected where this was going. Then Chi-eon bowed and humbly asked Woojin to participate in the tournament to raise the academy's status. But Woojin quickly refused the request, leaving Guak confused. Woojin said that he was dedicating his life solely to cooking, while Guak thought that if Mandrake was one of the prizes, Woojin might be interested. Then Jin said that if there was nothing else to discuss, he would be leaving. But Guak insisted that he couldn't give up so easily, adding that bringing Kim Chae-guk to the academy had already significantly boosted its status. Guak thought that if the academy performed well in the championship, the bureaucrats wouldn't be able to say anything until his retirement. He reflects that Baek Seol participating in the tournament would yield good results, but a single mistake could change everything. Guak concludes that if the sect master were in the tournament, there would be no way for him to lose, so he tries to think of a way to bring him into the tournament, especially since not even the Mandrake had piqued his interest. Then he tells Jin that he has an offer he won't be able to refuse and asks if he is willing to listen. Guak continues, saying that the dormitory has a shared kitchen, which is old and cramped, and that Jin must have particularly noticed this. Jin, already losing patience, tells Guak to get to the point. Then Guak says that if Jin participates in the tournament and achieves good results, he will build a private kitchen for him inside the academy. Jin is surprised by the offer and says that this conversation is not just empty talk, it is actually an intriguing proposal, while Guak waits for his response. However, Jin says that the offer is still not good enough. Suddenly, a news report appears on the TV, announcing that a guild has cleared a dungeon and recovered an artifact. This artifact is set to be auctioned. Jin sees the artifact, called the Fire Hammer, and says that he would also very much like to have it. Guak is startled by Jin's request, saying that an artifact from a ranked dungeon is worth hundreds of millions and that it makes no sense for Jin, who has no ambitions, to desire such a thing. But Jin's real reason was that he thought the hammer would be perfect for cracking nuts. The academy students were confused as to why they had been summoned to the gymnasium that morning without any explanation. Suddenly, Guak appeared, telling everyone to be quiet. Woojin and his team stood behind Guak, causing even more curiosity among the students about what was happening. Then Guak began by saying that everyone there was an aspiring hunter. He continued, stating that everyone must be aware that the hunter tournament would begin in 2 months, while the teachers wondered why Guak was in such a good mood. Guak went on, explaining that each organization could send 4 participants to the tournament, and that every year the academy conducted a rigorous selection process for these 4 members. However, this year he announced that 2 students had been chosen without any tests, Baek Seol-ha and Chien Woo-jin. Explaining the situation, Guak stated that Baek Seol-ha had proven herself in the Killer Bee dungeon, while Woo-jin had left his mark on both the Killer Bee dungeon and the Wild Boar dungeon. He mentioned that Chae-guk could testify better than him about this, so Kim Chae-guk stepped onto the stage to address everyone. Just moments earlier, Chae-guk had been lamenting on the bench, wondering what he had done to deserve going through this. In Guak's office, Chae-guk was questioned about whether his achievements were truly genuine, but Guak quickly clarified that it was actually Woo-jin who was behind it all. However, Guak said he could keep his mouth shut, but only under one condition. That condition was that Chae-guk had to stand before the students and explain what had happened in the dungeon and why Baek and Woo-jin were being sent to the tournament. So on stage, Chae-guk stated that he didn't know much about the academy, but he could vouch for the abilities of Baek Seol-ha and the student Chien Woo-jin. The students questioned the director's decision, while Chae-guk thought that if Baek had never entered the academy, he wouldn't be in this situation even for a fortune. In the director's office, Chi-guk noticed that something was off when he realized that the director used honorifics when speaking about Wu Jin. He wondered how that was even possible, using honorifics for a student? In what world would that make sense? But after his statement, Chi-guk was startled when he was suddenly approached by a reporter. The reporter apologized for scaring him and introduced himself as Kwon Jong-jin, a reporter from the Hunter Division. Chi-guk recognized that this was the same reporter he had encountered at the Wild Boar Portal, and he had been in a terrible mood that day. He wondered why he was here now. Chi-guk thanked the reporter for his interest but criticized him, saying that showing up unannounced was irritating. However, the reporter had something very important to ask. Then he asked Chi-guk if he had really recommended Qian Wu-jin to represent the academy in the tournament. Chi-guk was shocked and asked where the reporter had heard about that. The reporter responded that the news had spread rapidly on the Academy Hunters social network, and in those posts, it was being said that Chi-guk had abused his authority to let his disciple enter. But Chi-guk clearly did not consider Wu Jin his disciple. Chi-guk became frustrated upon realizing that everything was already spreading across social media. He said he couldn't ignore the situation since he had officially recommended Wu Jin, but suddenly Chi-guk snapped back to reality, remembering that one of the tournament prizes was a mandrake. He concluded that Wu Jin was only thinking about cooking, as expected. Feeling relieved, Chi-guk thought that if Wu Jin was after the mandrake, he would definitely place in the top 4. Then he openly told the reporter that he had recommended Wu Jin. With that, in a slightly threatening tone, Chi-guk said that Wu Jin hadn't entered the tournament because of him. Soon, news broke that Kim Chi-guk's disciple Wu Jin was participating in the tournament. This led to a flood of negative comments about Wu Jin, with people questioning who he was and whether the decision was an overstatement. More articles emerged, speculating that Wu Jin might actually be a hunter capable of reaching the top 4, and that Chi-guk and his disciple were fully focused on their training. Meanwhile, Wu Jin was being introduced to the place that would become his new kitchen. Gawaki asked him if he liked it. Wu Jin said it was fine, while thinking to himself that, after seeing all this, there was no way he could refuse to participate now. Gawaki asked what changes Wu Jin would like for the interior of the kitchen, and Wu Jin replied that he would think about it and answer later. Gawaki thought that, considering the glory the sect leader would bring to the academy, all this investment made sense. He concluded that no one would be a match for the sect leader and that the opponents were nothing more than beginners, making victory a certainty. Then Gawaki remembered that the only missing item was the hammer that was being auctioned, and he had to obtain it for the sake of the kitchen renovation. So Gawaki promised Wu Jin that he would acquire the fire hammer and would do whatever it took to win the bid, no matter what. Wu Jin said that everything was set and that he needed to leave since he had a class to attend at that moment. Students were discussing Wu Jin's cooking, doubting that it could actually enhance stats when consumed, while the spirit girl listened, feeling upset. Furious, she commented that people were being rude and should show more respect for the chef's food because, in the end, the most important thing was the taste. Wu Jin and the spirit girl headed to the gym, and upon arrival, the instructor said that the last class had been theoretical, but today's would be practical. He added that it would be a weapons training class. Those who already had experience with a specific weapon should use it, but for those without, he recommended spears or blunt weapons. Su Hyun declared that he would use his fists to practice boxing, and the instructor acknowledged that he would do well since his build had changed. Wu Jin picked up a spear for training, and the instructor took note, commenting that it was expected from Kim Chi-guk's disciple. Seon observed Wu Jin, thinking that it made no sense for a swordsman who could cut down dungeon bosses with a single strike to be using a spear. He reflected on how he had been watching Wu Jin since the beginning but still couldn't figure out his true identity. The only thing he had learned about Wu Jin was that he was extremely dedicated to cooking and was always using dungeon monster ingredients in his meals. Seon noted that the spirit girl ate Wu Jin's food with delight, and since she was from a grimoire, she must have high standards. This meant that Wu Jin had real talent in cooking. However, Seong suddenly recalled the terrible memory of tasting the last meal Wu Jin had made for him. That made him realize that Wu Jin had no talent at all. He thought to himself that he had eaten all kinds of food just to survive, but compared to Wu Jin's cooking, everything else tasted delicious. Seong wondered why Wu Jin had become Kim Chi-guk's disciple, but noted that he had known about Chi-guk even before his regression. Until then, Chi-guk had only been a rank B hunter, recognized by the public as a high-ranked hunter, but never acknowledged by top-tier hunters. Seong stated that even if Chi-guk had dodged the Slime King's attacks, the results wouldn't have been much different. The dungeon bosses that Chi-guk had been encountering were being taken down by Wu Jin, yet Seong couldn't understand why Chi-guk was getting all the credit. Seong thought that Wu Jin was trying to stay out of the control of the top-ranking hunters, but soon realized that Wu Jin was capable of overpowering most high-ranking hunters. He quickly considered that Wu Jin was, at the very least, rank A and most likely even higher, potentially rank S or above. Then he concluded that he should continue keeping an eye on Wu Jin, but at that moment, something even more important was on his mind. The Stern auction would open in 2 days, and if it happened as it did before his regression, a tragedy would occur there, and he must prevent this as soon as possible. Sean Jun starts by saying that he initially thought it was just a bandit attack on the auction, but over time, he realized that the group called Eclipse was also involved. He notes that the bodies found at the auction were mummified by the spell they used. Thus, Sean Jun concludes that he has already recovered from the injuries sustained in the fight against the Slime King and that he cannot just sit and wait. Wu Jin, who was beside Sean, reflects that holding a spear reminds him of an old comrade who was completely dedicated to the art of the spear. He was referring to the spear demon Zhang Yan. Wu Jin says that he tried to help him break his stubborn habits, but he was as inflexible as his weapon. While Wu Jin attacks the mannequin using the 7 demon dragon techniques, they recall that Shang Ying could have become a true dragon if not for his bad habits. The students watching Wu Jin notice that despite all the exaggerated movements, he couldn't do anything particularly special and seemed like an ordinary person. Sean Jun says that the students were foolish for not seeing the truth behind Wu Jin. Sean Jun notes that while the students might have thought Wu Jin was just stabbing randomly, he was sure that Wu Jin was wielding the spear with all his heart. Sean Jun comments that Wu Jin's strike could even pierce dimensions, and that he was not just an expert swordsman, but also a master of spears. This makes him wonder, what exactly was Wu Jin? One of the instructors warns Seong Jun for dozing off during training, expressing disappointment. The Stern Guild was the 5th largest guild, along with Samjogo and Chien-ik, which represented South Korea. While the Chien-ik and Samjogo guilds symbolized South Korea's military power, Stern represented financial power. This included manufacturing, support, security, and even entertainment, utilizing famous hunters. It was often said that if one wanted to make money in Korea, the easiest way was through Stern, and the most representative business of Stern was its auction house. Despite irregular schedules and a 500 million won entry fee, hunters still turned to the auction, as it displayed highly reliable items. Due to the multi-million won transactions, B-rank and A-rank hunters were responsible for the venue's security. That night, Wu Jin and his old servant Wak stood in front of the auction house. Wak said that everything would go smoothly and that auctions were often surprisingly tedious. Wu Jin remarked that opportunities to see rare items were uncommon, and that he enjoyed watching auctions from time to time. After that, Wak told Wu Jin to put on a mask. Wak explained that there had once been a hunter who, after losing a bid, assassinated the winner. Since then, only anonymous entry with masks had been permitted. Wu Jin understood the reasoning and noted that this proved they could not fully guarantee the safety of the participants while enforcing the rules. The two proceeded into the auction house, and upon reaching the entrance, a security guard asked Wak to show his identification bracelet. The security guard confirmed their entry and stated that the auction would be conducted via tablet, asking if they needed any assistance. They replied that they did not. The doors opened, and the guards thanked them for their visit, wishing them an enjoyable stay inside. Inside the auction house, Wu Jin noticed that everyone was wearing masks. As Wak and Wu Jin took their seats, the auctioneer thanked the visitors for attending. On stage, the auctioneer announced that now that everyone was present, he would begin the auction by revealing the first item. It was a strand of hair from the snow giant, the Yeti, with an initial bid of 100 million won. Meanwhile, Wak asked Wu Jin if he remembered the instructions regarding the tablet. Wak explained that information about the current item was displayed on the screen, allowing bids to be placed using the tablet. Yeti hair could be used as a trap to hunt other Yetis, and when mixed with potion ingredients, it could aid in hair growth. Realizing this, Wak placed his bid, saying that the effects of Yeti hair were incredible. The auctioneer then announced that the Yeti strand had reached 7.8 billion won in bids and was sold as there were no further offers. The next item was about to be presented. While Wak lamented that his bid had only been 500 million, Wu Jin was excited, observing that there were many tempting items. It was announced that the next item was a wyvern wing bone, which was extremely rare to find in good condition. Wu Jin says that adamantium would be great for kitchen knives and divine, and that sandalwood would be excellent for a cutting board. He realizes that he was being too greedy and that if he continues like this, he might lose what he already has. And so, the next item is announced. It is the Agnes Nest Hammer, an unidentified item from an A-rank dungeon with an initial bid of 1 billion won. Wak and Wu Jin pay close attention when it is announced, and Wu Jin says that seeing the hammer in person makes his heart race. The two nod to each other, and Wak places his bid of 1 billion, saying that it might end at that price. Wak reflects that most unidentified items have an 80% chance of having terrible stats. These items are not popular because they cannot be identified, and there have even been absurd cases where an item turned out to be cursed, causing the user's death. but in rare cases they might also have incredible abilities, which is why guilds have appraisers researching them. The auctioneer announces that the item has already reached bids of 2.25 billion won. Wak thinks that this item, which Korea cannot identify, could be a divine weapon with incredible power. But Wak panics when he hears that the item has already reached a bid of 6.8 billion. With great pain, Wak makes his final bid, offering 10.2 billion won, and thus, the auctioneer announces that the hammer has been sold. Feeling down after acquiring the item, Wak gets the idea to ask Woojin if he would consider going into a dungeon with him, as it would be very profitable. But Woojin argues that doing so would make his name known to the public and that he would like to dedicate his life solely to cooking. At that moment, the auctioneer announces that he will reveal the main item of the auction, awaited by most of the attendees. That item was an epic weapon called the Prison of Fire, obtained from an A-rank boss. Wak notices that this weapon was imbued with mana and fire resistance, and with the special ability to convert mana into fire, they could freely control the flames. That item was truly worthy of its title and would certainly be valued in the hundreds of billions. The auctioneer announces that the first bid was 10.5 billion and quickly reached 11 billion. Many bids were placed on that item, and it was eventually sold for 56 billion. Wak laments, saying he was lucky to have at least gotten the hammer. And so, the auctioneer announces the final item, a scroll found in the Agnes nest with an initial bid of 100 million won. Wak says that the hammer was made of mithril, so its value was understandable, but the scroll was being sold for an incredibly low price. But as he reflects, Wak notices something strange coming from behind and thinks it is just the wind. And suddenly, an explosion occurs in the middle of the auction. Two mysterious figures appear, and one of them says to remember only the people who are permitted to be used as sacrifices. His companion complies with the order given by Nehimuth, and they declare that they will begin. As soon as the explosion happens, the auctioneer panics and quickly calls the guards. Wak quickly realizes that they are under attack. One of the attacking figures chants a spell in an unknown language, causing the people on the stage to kneel. The man says that the spell is ready, and the girl asks if he remembers what they came to retrieve. The two then head toward the stage, saying they only need to take the scroll. The girl mentions that it was the scroll and just one more item. But suddenly, Hunter Park Daejeon rushes at the intruders, attacking with his fists. The woman easily dodges the attack and comments that, judging by his movements, he has strong resistance to magic. Then she counterattacks, saying that everything else is pathetic. The invaders state that sacrifices are best when they are in good condition, and that they should make an excellent sacrifice in this state. The girl acknowledges this, saying that is why she only touched the hunter's head. Woojin watches and says that their techniques are interesting, and that he would like to observe them more. Wak notices Woojin's interest in the invaders while thinking that they should remain still since the security guards would arrive soon. The woman's ally wonders why they needed so many sacrifices, while she tells him to just focus on the mission. But suddenly, the invaders are surrounded by several guards wielding katanas, ordering them not to move. The man tells the girl that she was foolish for not stopping, while she responds that once they return, she will kill him. Thus, the girl dashed forward, swiftly attacking the guards, while the man used his dark magic to subdue the security personnel. Woojin observed that, compared to the academy students, the invaders were on a completely different level, and that they drew mana directly from their hearts. He also noticed that the dark aura was different from the absorption technique, which had clear limitations regarding the caster's capabilities. Looking at the woman, Woojin remarked that he had never seen such a malevolent energy emanating from someone. It was as if she was sorrow given human form. The dark man told the girl that she should have held back to maintain the quality of the sacrifices, but she retorted that he had been no different. The man then concluded that all they needed to do was retrieve the scroll and the hammer. As soon as Wak heard that they were after the items, he became agitated, while Woojin rose from his seat and declared that he would take care of things. Wak was surprised to see that the sect leader was going to intervene in the situation, so he simply acknowledged the message. Turning to one of the staff members, Wak ordered them to gather the people and evacuate them quickly. As Woojin walked toward the intruders, Wak commented that they were the unluckiest people in the world for provoking the wrath of the sect leader. Irritated, Woojin stated that he hadn't wanted to pay attention to this, but it had been a long time since a fool had dared to covet what was his. He added that he regretted the lives that had been lost, but in the end, it was simply due to their lack of strength. The dark man was surprised that Woojin was moving without any detectable energy, and concluded that he was far too confident, rushing straight to his own demise. The girl told Harap to focus on preparing the ritual and that she would handle Woojin. Woojin and his opponent locked eyes, and in the blink of an eye, the girl teleported behind Woojin, ready to strike. However, Woojin effortlessly defended himself, causing the girl to panic, as she couldn't sense any aura from him. leaving her utterly confused. Disgusting, Woojin exclaimed as he stopped the girl's attack with his hands, forcing her to retreat. Harap mocked the girl, saying that her strength lay in her lack of mercy, while she explained that Woojin was far stronger than she had anticipated. The girl charged again, launching another flurry of attacks at Woojin, who continued blocking every single one with ease. Terrified, the invader wondered where Woojin had come from, as he was too skilled, meaning she would have to use impurity. Suddenly, the woman's body began to emit a dark aura, and her eyes were consumed by black flames. Observing this, Harap remarked that for her to resort to that power, this was no longer a game. He would have to join the fight. A dark spell was launched from behind Woojin by Harap, but Woojin had no difficulty defending against it with just his bare hands. Harap panicked upon seeing that his attack had been stopped effortlessly, even though it was meant to drain power from negative emotions. The girl explained that among the powers of impurity, she possessed the power of despair, which corrupted both the body and mind of her opponents. Harap watched in horror, unable to comprehend the situation, as Woojin remarked that their attacks were on a different level compared to Neemat. Losing his patience, Woojin delivered a powerful strike to Neemat's abdomen, sending her flying across the battlefield. Breaking into a cold sweat, Harap muttered that, according to the information he had, there shouldn't have been a master of this level at the auction. This was becoming a real problem. He then began chanting a dark spell in an unknown language, but he couldn't understand why Woojin wasn't attacking him. Woojin, on the other hand, reflected that he wanted to see more of his opponent's abilities, but it simply wasn't possible. Every time he came into contact with that energy, he felt disgusted. Harap was still overwhelmed with doubts about Woojin until sheer terror struck him when Woojin finally decided to act. Woojin had drawn the incredible spear of the fire prisoner, stating that he saw no problem in borrowing it for a while. Woojin was impressed, as the spear truly ignited into flames just as described, concluding that it was an incredible weapon. Stunned by the situation, Harap muttered that the flames of the spear should have been red, yet in Woojin's hands, they had turned crimson. Wak was satisfied to see Woojin wielding the spear, commenting that now he finally looked serious. Meanwhile, Woojin, standing in a menacing stance, declared that he would attack. And like the wind, Woojin shot forward, completely ignoring Harap and heading straight for Neemat. As he struck the woman repeatedly using Chiguk techniques, Woojin reflected that he should go easy on her. There was much he needed to ask. Neemat recognized the technique and questioned what a member of the Jujong Mayong family was doing in that place. But still pressing the woman, Woojin tells her to shut up because he is the only one who will be asking questions, and then he questions her objectives. Suddenly, Neemat steps back and says she is fed up with this and tells Woojin to stop playing around. She realizes that Woojin has been effortlessly blocking all of her attacks and that his spear strikes are becoming sharper. Harap prepares another spell while saying that Woojin shouldn't dare to challenge them and that he is just trying to act tough. Neemat says that she used to think the spiral spear had many flaws, but that was only because of Chiguk's flashy fighting style. She then acknowledges that the true nature of the spear is delivering dozens of solemn, precise slashes to eliminate an opponent. Before Neemat can react, she is struck by multiple spear slashes. Even after the attacks, she remains standing as Harap asks if she is alright. She tells Harap to prepare the bottomless pit while she buys time for him. Harap argues that it would be better for them to retreat and see what happens, but Neemat insists that if they retreat after failing the mission, the organization will not let them go. After hearing her reasoning, Harap agrees with her and begins chanting a new spell, enveloping Neemat's body in darkness. Woojin watches without any fear, commenting that now they have decided to take action. Neemat suddenly begins to transform, merging with the darkness, and takes on a new form with 6 arms. She then promises Woojin that he will not have a pleasant death. Woojin realizes that she has wrapped her body in a black protective aura, and she charges at him, attacking with her dark fists. Despite this, Woojin easily continues parrying her blows with his spear. He reflects that Neemat's physical abilities have increased significantly, but she is just moving recklessly like a raging bull. After that, Woojin kicks Neemat away, saying that her attacks make no sense. Now enraged, Neemat exclaims that even after using all of her power and activating the Yaksha temple, she still cannot land a clean hit on Woojin. Woojin tells her that her fundamentals are weak, but she has great control over her energy, so he gives her credit for that. However, upon hearing this, she becomes deeply furious, saying that Woojin's arrogance knows no bounds and that she will tear him apart completely. She quickly charges at him again, using her wild dance technique, but Woojin continues to parry all of her attacks with his spear. Then, without any effort, Woojin pierces through Neemat with a clean strike, leaving her in disbelief. Woojin declares that Neemat's power is pathetic and that with only her energy control, she will never be able to defeat him. But suddenly, Harap shouts at Neemat, telling her that it is enough and that everything is ready to activate the bottomless pit. Black walls emerge, surrounding Woojin, while Nehemot smirks maliciously and tells him he will regret being so arrogant. And with that, Woojin is completely trapped in the darkness of the bottomless pit. Harap states that this is his unique technique, which drains the opponent's power and confuses their senses, a technique he has devoted his entire life to perfecting. He is certain that no matter how strong the hunter is, as long as they are inside the bottomless pit, they have no chance of escape. Nehemot appears behind Woojin, whispering in his ear and asking if he is having trouble since he suddenly went silent. After that, she attacks with all her fury, but Woojin dodges with ease, saying that this new power is worse than impurity. Woojin states that even with his senses sealed, it is easy to detect enemies by their strong energy. But what is truly troublesome is the space itself. That space is designed to drain the life force of anyone inside, consuming Woojin's strength like a voracious ghost. Reflecting on the situation, Woojin concludes that this spell is so malicious that even highly skilled individuals would struggle to handle it. But suddenly, he is struck by an attack. Nehemot argues that before, Woojin was just acting arrogantly, but now he has started to react. She continues, saying that the longer someone stays in the bottomless pit, the more exhausted they become, and then she asks whether he will succumb to the pit or to her hands. But before Nehemot can continue speaking, Woojin is already in front of her, telling her she is crazy. Losing his patience, Woojin pierces through her body with the flame spear, telling her to shut up. Harap, upon seeing Nehemot defeated by Woojin, falls into complete despair. He cannot believe that Nehemot was defeated after being strengthened by the bottomless pit in just a single strike. Harap questioned why Woojin was not being affected by the bottomless pit, as he should have turned into a mummy long ago. Then, Harap realized that Woojin still had plenty of energy and suddenly understood that Woojin was trying to destroy the bottomless pit. Enraged, Harap shouted that this was his unique technique, something he had spent his entire life researching, so it was impossible for Woojin to do such a thing. But Woojin, as he wielded the spear, remembered his companion John Hyong. He recalled how John Hyong had always been by his side, holding his spear to protect him. Returning to reality, Woojin said that even though John Hyong was gone, his spear was still with him. Growing even more desperate, Harap began launching reckless attacks with his shadows. Then Woojin assumed an offensive stance, declaring that he would use the sudden form of the demon dragon, First Palm. In an instant, he summoned a gigantic fire dragon, shattering all the darkness of the bottomless pit. In the blink of an eye, he stood face to face with Harap, asking if he had anything else to show him. If not, he would eliminate him. Harap was so terrified that he couldn't even speak. Woojin continued, saying that this was the end for him and demanding that he reveal his identity and purpose. But Harap lost his mind, calling upon the god of chaos, beginning a prayer and begging his god to lend him power for salvation. He continued chanting incantations in another language until a dark power began to emanate from his body. He then thanked his god for answering his call and declared that he would offer his entire soul to his master. However, before he could do anything, that power began consuming his body, making him lose control. Woojin, observing, remarked that, unlike Nehemot's transformation, this one had completely changed the atmosphere. The ritual was complete. The god of chaos had already taken over Harap's body, declaring that he had been watching the efforts of this mortal. Consumed by darkness, the Lord of Chaos introduced himself, saying that he would carry out the grand plan for this world. But Woojin only wondered what had happened to Harap. Then, the Lord of Chaos noticed that Woojin remained incredibly calm in his presence and stated that it was worth coming there in person. After that, the Lord of Chaos said that if Woojin swore loyalty to Eclipse, he would personally grant him power. But Woojin quickly refused, saying that he had no interest in such things in his current life. Enraged, the Lord of Chaos declared that he would make Woojin submit by force, launching an attack with his darkness. However, before he could act, Woojin drove his spear into the Lord of Chaos' chest with immense crimson flames. The Lord of Chaos understood that Woojin had chosen to reject his grace with his mortal body, and as his life faded away, he stated that he wanted to see if Woojin would remain so calm the next time they met. With that, all the evil in the area dissipated. Wak offered his prayers, saying that the celestial demon should reign for years, and that all should submit to him. Afterward, Woojin asked Wak if he had ever heard of the Lord of Chaos, but Wak said no and asked if he should investigate. Woojin decided he would investigate on his own. He lamented that he had encountered the Lord of Chaos, but had not uncovered his true objectives. He reflected that they had invaded the auction to use people for some sort of sacrifice, but he did not yet know the source of their power or the true grand plan of the Lord of Chaos. Before it was too late, Woojin said that he needed to leave before people arrived, though he intended to investigate this matter gradually. The incident at the auction house became a hot topic on social media for several days. There were reports about the death of the indestructible part Dajun of Hangyeon, and many questions arose about the identity of the auction's hero, the masked lancer. Sion, reading the news, remarked that the future had been changed once again. The auction had been attacked by Nehemot and the life-stealing Harap, both of whom were key figures in the mystery of Eclipse. Seon-jun reflected that even before the regression, they had already been powerful enemies ones he had no chance against. Now he wondered who had managed to defeat them. Seong had infiltrated the auction disguised as a guard to minimize the damage, and while patrolling, he planted artifacts to interfere with the enemy's magic. During this process, he also eliminated various dark enemies who could have become formidable threats in the future. Additionally, he secretly swapped the auction scroll with a fake one. Seon-jun was satisfied with his achievements, but he still couldn't accept that someone was capable of eliminating the two strongest individuals at that auction. The masked lancer, who was captured by the cameras, was clearly using the spiral spear, and the media claimed that his identity was Chae-guk. But Seon comments that the Chae-guk he knows wouldn't last even 2 minutes against those two opponents, so he continues to ponder who the masked man who stole the spotlight could be. He even considers the possibility that it might be Woojin. However, he concludes that, with Woojin's obsession with cooking, he wouldn't have been there, and he wouldn't have any reason to use the spiral spear technique since he was much stronger than that. But suddenly, Seon-jun realizes that Kim Chae-guk never surpassed rank B, but that was only before the regression. Now he seemed different and was proactively defeating the Eclipse bosses, as if he knew every move of Eclipse before they even happened. After this, Seon concludes that Chae-guk must also be a regressor. Next, Woojin is shown cooking for the spirit girl, who comments that his meat dish has a rich aroma and is far better than she expected. Woojin transfers the broth to another pot, and the spirit girl asks if he is finished, but he replies that there is still one important step left. Suddenly, he wields the hammer he acquired at the auction, saying that it was all he needed for the next step. He praises the hammer, highlighting its good weight and comfortable grip, even suggesting that if the handle were extended, it could be used as a rice cake hammer. But he adds that, for today's dish, they would focus solely on the bones, the wild boar bone stew. Woojin begins hammering the bones like a madman, reflecting that by crushing them, he would create a more concentrated broth and improve the texture. He vividly remembers his past life when his disciples praised the crispy texture of his broth. After this, he tells himself that he should finish quickly so he can serve the food. But suddenly, status windows appear before him. The notifications state that the conditions have been met and that the unidentified spirit is awakening, causing the item to resonate. The spirit girl and Woojin are both confused by the notifications when suddenly, a voice emerges from the hammer shouting, "No." The spirit within the hammer yells that Woojin boiled the perfect material for bone powder and even ground it down, calling him ignorant and demanding an apology immediately. But Woojin is completely confused, unable to comprehend the situation. The spirit girl is offended when the hammer spirit accuses them of ignorance for enhancing the flavor, while Woojin simply asks who he is. The hammer spirit is shocked that they call this cooking, but Woojin continues to press him for answers until he finally decides to speak. He reveals himself as Schmidt, the emperor who once led the Black Hammer Empire and a genius blacksmith. However, Woojin doesn't care and resumes hammering the bones, while Schmidt panics, saying that in situations like this, there should be more dialogue. The spirit girl says that isn't necessary and that he is strange, continuing to insult Schmidt while he retorts that she is just a tiny insect. Suddenly, Woojin begins emanating a sinister aura, telling them both to shut up, and Schmidt feels oppressed, thinking that opposing him might lead to annihilation. The blacksmith states that it has been 700 years since he was forging a supreme weapon that would go down in history. He cries as he recounts how he died while creating his masterpiece and was reincarnated into that hammer. However, he declares that Woojin has the potential to surpass him as a blacksmith and urges him to hurry and walk the path of a craftsman. But Woojin quickly refuses the offer, stating that he will live solely as a chef, while the blacksmith insists that he is wasting his innate talent. Schmidt panics as he watches Woojin shatter the bones, exclaiming that at the very least, he could have made a dwarven armor out of them. The spirit girl argues that uneaten food is more tragic than unrealized dreams, and so Woojin finishes his high-quality A-rank broken bone soup. Afterward, Woojin opens his inventory with the intention of storing the blacksmith inside, causing Schmidt to go into complete despair. Seal Bake tastes the food and says it is as delicious as always. Woojin's system alerts him that he has completed the daily missions for an entire week, unlocking the main quest. The protagonist boards a bus, reflecting that it had been a long time since he last returned home. The spirit girl remarked that she thought they were going to complete the main mission, but Woojin said that he hadn't been home since joining the academy. Woojin reflected that even after regaining his memories from his past life, there were things deeply ingrained in this body. Family was as precious to him as cooking, and now they could finally proceed with the main mission, which aimed to create a dish rated B or higher. Woojin wondered what the dungeon pepper was among the rewards, and the spirit girl explained that it was a pepper from a legendary dungeon that housed various types of peppers. She said it was a dungeon specialized in culinary ingredients, created by the very person who had made her. He was a chef who recorded countless recipes in his grimoire, all of which were exceptional. He could not be compared to anyone else. Woojin was excited to improve his skills and asked what determined a dish's rating. The spirit girl explained that the rating was based on the effort put into the dish and how rare its ingredients were. Woojin reflected that the highest quality dish he had ever managed to prepare was donpo pork, and no matter how much effort he put in, he could only achieve a C+ rating. At last, Woojin arrived home, where he was welcomed by his mother and younger brother. Shortly after, Woojin's mother offered him food, and they all gathered for a meal. The spirit girl also ate, honestly commenting that the flavor was weak and that this kind of cooking lacked skill. She added that the flavors were not balanced and that they prioritized precise measurements too much. Woojin's mother asked if he missed eating her homemade food after being away for so long, and he replied that he did. Feeling embarrassed, the spirit girl admitted that a mother's love-filled cooking was the best, while Woojin's mother asked how he was doing in school. After finishing the meal, they expressed their gratitude, and Woojin told his mother to rest. He would prepare dinner. Woojin then told his younger brother that he had created and refined a new dish while at the academy. Hearing this, his brother broke into a cold sweat, saying he would rather go to hell than eat it. Their mother praised Woojin for his cooking, but informed them that she had a doctor's appointment, so they would have to eat dinner without her. She assured them that it was just a routine checkup and that they shouldn't worry, while Woojin's brother desperately begged her to stay. After that, she left the house, saying it was getting late and bidding them farewell. Woojin said he should start preparing dinner, but his brother insisted that he should leave that job to him. His brother criticized him, saying that they had just eaten, yet Woojin was already thinking about food instead of taking time to have a conversation. He added that Woojin's obsession with cooking had made him lose all the warmth he once had. Xianho observed that Woojin hadn't been this way before, wondering if it was an effect of his awakening, but he quickly dismissed the idea. Then he remembered that Woojin might have been influenced by their mother. He had always loved cooking since childhood. The day Woojin awakened, everything changed completely, Xianho reflected. He compared Woojin's passion for cooking to his own desire to become a hunter, and wondered if Woojin was using cooking as a way to cope with their father's death. Xianho approached Woojin and mentioned that he had seen on the news that Woojin had become a disciple of Chi-Guk. He asked what was going on. Woojin responded in a way that suggested the news was false, leading Xianho to assume that the information about his participation in the hunter tournament was also a lie. But then Woojin clarified that this specific detail was true. He had made a promise to someone. This only made Xianho even more curious, but Woojin remained silent. Xianho grew furious at being ignored and wondered if Woojin acted like this at the academy, recalling the rumors about his strange meals. With confidence, Woojin declared that many people enjoyed his cooking, which left Xianho in shock. He found it impossible to believe. As he cooked a new dish, Woojin told Xianho that he should see it for himself, adding that he would understand once he tasted the meal. Terrified, Xianho nervously asked what kind of meat Woojin was preparing. Woojin replied that it was koji fermented steak. After that, Woojin began cooking the steak with incredible style and precision. Once the dish was ready, Xianho dreaded the smell but knew he had to at least take one bite to avoid Woojin's complaints. However, the moment he put a piece into his mouth, he felt utterly defeated by its taste. Woojin reflected that he would have liked to use the hammer to prepare the meal, but it would be complicated to explain the hammer's origin to Xianho. Furious, Xianho asks what the hell Woojin put in the food and assumes that after becoming a hunter, Woojin started using dungeon items in cooking. Then Woojin says that his brother is asking the obvious, which completely breaks him mentally. Suddenly, their mother arrives, saying that she could hear Xianho's voice from every floor, and adding that he was still immature. But Xianho notices that his mother seems more serious than usual, and asks if she received bad news at her checkup. She says it's nothing serious, but her pulse is tense, so she will have to close the restaurant and rest for a few days. Xianho agrees and tells his mother she should rest since she has been working for years without a break, but she seems apprehensive, saying she has many regular customers. Suddenly, Woojin says there's no need to worry because he will take care of the restaurant. Woojin's mother looks happy with the decision, while Xianho is in complete shock. In front of the restaurant, Xianho asks if Woojin remembers the promise he made to their mother to watch over the restaurant but never enter the kitchen. Woojin reflects that Xianho's cooking resembles their mother's, which he finds unfortunate. Xianho realizes that it has been a long time since he last helped at their mother's restaurant and asks Woojin to prepare the ingredients while he does the cleaning. And so, the two begin their respective tasks. with Woojin chopping ingredients while Siono cleans the place. Suddenly, their uncles arrive at the restaurant and ask about their mother. Siono replies that they are taking care of things while she recovers from her wrist condition. Orders start coming in, with Woojin writing down what customers want while Siono handles the cooking. After serving all the customers, Siono is already exhausted, asking if they'll have any time before dinner, and Woojin believes they will. Siono reflects on how exhausting it is to run a restaurant and wonders how their mother manages it. Since he is earning well, he feels that he won't have to manage the restaurant in the future. But suddenly, Siono feels something strange in his stomach and tells Woojin that he needs to go to the bathroom, begging him not to touch the kitchen. And once again, as he leaves, Siono reinforces that Woojin should stay away from the kitchen. Meanwhile, the guild leader Lee Jong-gil, called Arang, walks while saying he didn't expect Daejeon to die in such a manner, and that now he would have to fill his position. He says he was shocked when he saw the auction footage where the indestructible Daejeon disappeared in an instant. But Arang complains that his whole body aches, especially his back, saying that when he was young, it didn't bother him, but now age has caught up to him. Nevertheless, he knows he must continue his routine, as he has gotten used to visiting nearby restaurants since his previous one was destroyed in the gate incident. Upon entering Woojin's restaurant, he notices that the interior is old but well-maintained, observing that it is one of those classic places with good food. Woojin greets him normally, but Arang reflects that the restaurant owner is younger than he expected, so perhaps the food won't be as good. Thus, he decides to order something simple. After placing his order, Woojin says nothing, merely staring at the customer before walking away, making Arang question the service. The spirit girl sees this as an opportunity to showcase the chef's skills, but Woojin, despite his promise not to cook, feels it would be wrong to keep a customer waiting. So he decides to start cooking, reflecting that serving food to a waiting customer is the most important thing in becoming a chef. Woojin struggles between maintaining the restaurant's traditional flavors or making the best dish he can, but he can't resist and ends up mixing dungeon ingredients into the food, resulting in an A-rank dish. He enhances the flavor using cacti and fennel seeds, then adds lemon juice for freshness. Woojin explains that he coated the meat with viscous fluids that melt when heated, creating a complex flavor. After that, he serves the dish to Arang, reflecting that he broke his promise and will have to apologize to Shionho later. As Arang tastes the dish, he realizes something is off. He points out that the meat is extremely dense and bitter. He reflects that if the ingredients were spoiled, they would smell bad, but that isn't the case. It actually smells quite good. Arang feels extremely uncomfortable eating it and wonders what Woojin has done to the food. As he expresses his dissatisfaction, a status screen appears before him, notifying that consuming the dish has increased his health by 3 for the next 24 hours. Arang was surprised to discover that the food contained dungeon energy, increasing his health, and more importantly, his back pain had improved. Meanwhile, Siono had finally come out of the bathroom, feeling relieved, when he noticed that a customer was in the restaurant. He became furious upon realizing that Woojin had served the customer his cooking, but then he suddenly recognized that the customer was Arang, the leader of the Jonggil Guild. Xiano tried to explain the dish that had just been served, but he noticed that Arang was smiling. Arang approached Woojin and introduced himself as the guild leader. He said he would be direct. He wanted to hire Woojin as the guild's exclusive chef and purchase the restaurant, promising to treat him well. Hearing this, Xiano was left speechless, while Arang reflected that he had never heard of food that granted buffs, thinking that the Qian 8 Guild must not find out about this. So he decided to act before they could discover Woojin. But first he needed to check whether the restaurant was a special place or if the true key was Woojin himself. Woojin liked the offer, but he wanted to share his food with more people. The spirit girl lamented that someone had finally recognized his value. Woojin mentioned that the restaurant belonged to his mother, so it wasn't his decision to make. Besides, he needed to focus on his main mission. He reflected that the mission required a B-rated dish, and the spirit girl had mentioned that the rating was also related to the rarity of the ingredients. In the classroom, the professor stated that it had been 2 weeks since the students enrolled in the academy, and that they should have already adapted to the environment. He then announced that they would have an exam on August 20, reassuring them that, as it was the first test, it wouldn't be too difficult. He explained that the evaluation would consist of 10% written test, 30% mana manipulation, and 60% hunting an E-rank monster. He added that the monster hunt would involve 3 delusions created by magic, easing the students' concerns. A stir spread among the students regarding the E-rank monster hunting exam. After all, the only one who had done such a thing before was Woojin. Woojin was reflecting that to achieve high-quality dishes, he would need to take his time preparing them. When Bag Seal approached him to talk, she asked how his exam preparations were going, suggesting that they seek Chi-guk's help for mana manipulation and monster hunting. Then, feeling embarrassed, Baek hesitated before asking if Woojin was free over the weekend and invited him to study together. Woojin thought about how he wanted to return her kindness, but ultimately said that he already had plans for the weekend and wanted to focus solely on cooking. Baek understood and instead invited him to have lunch together that day. Woojin expressed gratitude, appreciating that she enjoyed his food, while the other students listened in shock. The professor then stated that in their previous training, they had used holograms, and it became clear that the students' awareness of traps was severely lacking. As a result, he had decided to take drastic measures. He explained that traps were common in dungeons, but there was something even more typical in traps. Then he announced that the students would now study poisons by consuming poisonous herbs directly. His goal was to improve the students' awareness of poisons, which would, in turn, enhance their awareness of traps as well. The students were hesitant about eating poisonous herbs, thinking that an entire lesson dedicated to it was unnecessary. The professor explained that these were herbs found in low-level dungeons, and in survival situations, they could be consumed because they were not highly toxic. He added that after ingestion, they would experience swelling in their tongues and fingers, with symptoms lasting between 3 to 5 minutes. One of the students questioned the professor, pointing out that even if the symptoms were mild, it was still poison, and in severe cases, it could be lethal. The professor, maintaining a serious expression, told him to continue speaking. The student then concluded that everyone already knew about poisons and that the lesson was a waste of time. With disdain, the professor retorted that this same student had triggered 11 traps during the last test, and he wasn't the only one. The majority of the students had triggered at least 10 traps. He then asked if the student truly believed what he was saying and exclaimed that if this had been real, they would all be dead. Already exhausted, the professor asked if there were any more objections. Since no one spoke up, he continued the lesson. Seon-jun, as he chewed on one of the herbs, remarked that he had once gone through difficulties after eating it unknowingly. Baek-seol also tried one, saying that despite being poisonous, it had no real taste. It was just like chewing on grass. Woojin, while eating Arcus saffron, noted that it had a pleasant aroma and could be useful in recipes. He reflects that he had planned to search for new dungeon ingredients but kept postponing it due to unexpected events. Suddenly, Woojin asks the professor if he could take some Arcus saffron with him, but the professor refuses, saying that it was against academy rules. Seeing Woojin's disappointed expression, the professor wonders how he even managed to pass through the tower. But then Woojin's system suddenly informs him which dungeons contain Arcus saffron. It feels as if the system is reading his mind. Woojin looks for an E-rank dungeon and eventually finds one in the tropical forest, the same place where he once captured a golden frog. Inside the dungeon, Chi-guk remarks that after a tough week, now comes a golden weekend. He wonders why he is even there when he had other plans. Chi-guk reflects that Woojin always drags him to different places and questions whether Woojin has nothing better to do on the weekend. Then he notices that Woojin has been collecting saffron since they arrived. But Chi-guk remembers that if prepared properly, it can be used as an analgesic. However, Chi-guk is annoyed because Woojin is the only one collecting it, and he fears that Woojin will use it in one of his crazy recipes. He remains very confused about the whole situation and worries that another boss might appear, leading to Woojin taking all the credit once again. But this could also work to Chi-guk's advantage, as it might make the public forget about the case of the mysterious Lancer. Still, he can't shake the feeling that something is off. Chi-guk fears that he might have to eat Woojin's cooking once again. Baek, who is also present, reflects that Chi-guk seems to be trying to stay close to her because she is Dujang's daughter, but it seems like he is actually more interested in Woojin, so she concludes that Chi-guk must have truly accepted Woojin as his disciple. Even though the rumors about him aren't particularly widespread, she notes that the articles make it seem like Chi-guk genuinely cares about Woojin, so everything seems fine, until she is suddenly ambushed by a giant frog. She delivers a precise strike to the frog, but something is wrong. Suddenly, the frog is swallowed by a monster lurking behind her. Then Chi-guk appears and swiftly defeats the monster, telling Seol-ha that she needs to focus on her rhythm and swing her sword more. Baek thanks Chi-guk for his guidance, and he adds that she should take a moment to recover her breath. Woojin observes carefully and reflects that Baek lacks conviction. He sees hesitation in her sword because she lacks self-confidence. He asserts that this cannot be fixed with words or advice, and once she gains confidence, her talent will allow her to surpass her current limits. Woojin decides to simply observe her, while Chi-guk wonders how much longer they will stay there, feeling that a boss could appear at any moment. Chi-guk also dreads the fact that Woojin will probably cook again that day, but if it increases his stats, he is willing to endure it. He reflects that he has never heard of someone increasing their stats through food, and if Woojin actually has a unique skill that allows this, it would be incredible. Looking at it from that perspective, he thinks he might be able to tolerate it, but then he remembers his past meals and immediately rejects the idea. Chi-guk reflects on Woojin's obsession with cooking, but when he looks at him, he sees that he is drinking poison and quickly warns him not to do so directly. Woojin is surprised and exclaims that it actually tastes really good. Then his system notifies him that he has successfully extracted snake venom. Chi-guk realizes that he was completely wrong to expect good food from someone who is casually drinking snake venom. Excited by the taste, Woojin says that the venom is incredible, describing it as having a salty and lingering flavor, totally different from killer bee venom. From that moment, Woojin already has his next dish in mind, and he is certain it will be B rank, so he decides to leave the dungeon. Baek and Chi-guk are shocked by Woojin's sudden decision to leave and wonder if he won't cook right there. Seolha becomes anxious and asks how long it will take for the dish to be ready. Woojin replies that he will finish it by the next night and will call her then. Chi-guk, still confused about Woojin's premature exit from the dungeon, laments that he will have to meet him again the next evening, only to realize that he will be spending the whole weekend with him. On the night of the dinner, they gather in the academy's cafeteria. Chi-guk wonders if he should leave as soon as possible because the meal looks strange in every way. Baek-seol asks if Chi-guk is excited about the meal too, which makes him question if she is even normal. Chi-guk realized that Woojin had entered the dungeon just to collect saffron for his dish. He noticed that there were others in the same situation as him, merely waiting for the cruel fate of eating Woojin's cooking. Blake started eating, and Chi-guk, upon noticing that she enjoyed Woojin's latest dish, questioned her stomach's resilience before asking for her opinion. She responded that it was delicious and that the noodles gave off a tingling sensation, making Chi-guk hesitant to try the dish. Motivated by the potential status boost, Chi-guk was willing to eat it, convincing himself that many dishes had an unpleasant smell but still tasted good. However, as soon as he put it in his mouth, it felt as if his entire body had been struck by lightning. He said that each sip of the broth felt like a bolt of lightning hitting his tongue, comparing the experience to torture. Curious, Baek asked how Woojin had prepared the dish, to which he replied that he was inspired by the Japanese noodle dish, tan tan. Woojin explained that to balance the acidity of the noodles, he added saffron and various spices, along with ground wild boar to enhance the texture. Baek agreed, saying she could actually taste the sparks, while Woojin mentioned that he had refined snake venom to add a salty flavor. He was surprised that people were actually interested in his cooking, and stated that eating a dish was about appreciating the deep mystery surrounding it. Chi-guk was astonished to see that Woojin and Baek were acting as if this were normal, declaring that the two of them made a perfect pair. What bothered Chi-guk the most, however, was that in order to receive a status boost, he had to finish the entire dish, so he decided to swallow everything in one go and ignore the taste. After finishing the entire dish, he declared that he had survived being electrocuted and had done it solely for the status boost. But something was wrong. Seconds passed, and the status window didn't appear. He realized that everything had played out just like last time. Woojin noticed that Chi-guk had finished his meal, while Baek, beside him, thanked him for the food, saying it was delicious. Meanwhile, Chi-guk continued lamenting the fact that he hadn't received a status boost, leading to the revelation that only dishes rated A or higher granted status increases. After this, Woojin completed his first main mission, unlocking Mission 2, which involved gathering ingredients from the depths of a submerged cave. Woojin regretted that even after refining snake venom and spending his entire day preparing the dish and peppers, he still couldn't reach an A rating. The spirit girl agreed that it was unfortunate. He should have achieved an A rating by adding the dungeon peppers. Woojin reflected that the pepper clashed with the saffron's flavor, diminishing the taste of the noodles, though the dungeon pepper still intrigued him. He concluded that he didn't yet fully understand the pepper's power, and that using it in this way felt like an insult to his pride, which was why he hadn't added it to the noodles. Woojin decided not to use the dungeon pepper until he fully understood it, believing that relying on it would make the dish feel less like his own. The spirit girl said she didn't doubt the chef's skills, but the pepper was an ingredient made from the rarest materials, and understanding it would take a long time. Regardless, Woojin said he had time to figure it out and would learn through trial and error. Woojin checked his main mission, acknowledging that ingredient gathering was essential for a chef, and noticed that the reward was a fermentation storage unit. The spirit girl warned Woojin that this wasn't an ordinary fermentation storage. It worked even while inside his inventory. She explained that he no longer needed a physical location for fermentation, as the storage would automatically adjust the temperature and humidity of the ingredients. Woojin was thrilled to realize that items in his inventory would maintain their original size and could now be fermented there. He decided to head out immediately. Suddenly, Chi-guk appeared, asking if Woojin understood the meaning of rest, as he had been calling them out for 3 days in a row. Chi-guk realized that they hadn't found the final boss and that the last dish had only made him spend an entire day in the bathroom. He wished he could just take a break. He recalled that his master had postponed the conversation about taking in a disciple and for now, had ordered him to use Woojin as a distraction from the auction incident. Chi-guk understood that his master was referring to the masked lancer, yet he couldn't understand why people believed it was him. Upon reviewing the CCTV footage, Chi-guk was shocked. The lancer's movements were eerily similar to his own, so he remained silent. Chi-guk concluded that his master genuinely didn't know who the masked lancer was, but even he couldn't think of anyone else capable of using those spear techniques. Sighing, Chi-guk realizes that he has no choice, and that even he thought he might be involved. In an attempt to delay the meeting, Chi-guk asks Bak if she is tired, stating that excessive effort is harmful to one's health, but she replies that she is fine. He becomes furious at her response, but does not let it show, merely suggesting that they should proceed to the cave Woojin had mentioned. Chi-guk reflects that he is part of an abnormal team with exotic tastes, and that he has only endured so far thanks to the status rewards. Chi-guk recalls that last time, the experience was even worse than the food, and believes that with so many people in the submerged cave, there is no chance of a hidden boss appearing. Thus, he decides to focus solely on improving his image, while Woojin tells him to move out. A group is shown battling the long-legged crab at the bottom of the sea. This group is struggling due to a lack of healing while under pressure from the crab, until it is suddenly sliced in half, announcing the arrival of Woojin and his group. A knight apologizes for losing aggro, but Chi-guk calmly responds that there was no way to avoid the attack. Chi-guk has received apologies from lower-ranked hunters before, but this time, something feels off. To everyone's surprise, the knight suddenly asks Chi-guk for an autograph. With this, Chi-guk realizes that his reputation has skyrocketed. He replies that he doesn't have any paper with him, but promises to remember next time. The hunters discuss the possibility of a boss appearing, but believe that if there were one, it would have already been discovered. However, they trust that if a boss does appear, Kim Chi-guk will know how to handle it. They are surprised to see Baek in Chi-guk's disciple and express jealousy toward Woojin, as he seems to be treated very well. Woojin, uninterested in the others, simply reflects on his next dish and how he will cook it to perfection. Chi-guk is pleased to be recognized by the clan and to have improved his image, but he feels uneasy because it's all thanks to Woojin. He fears that Woojin might suddenly change his mind and reveal to everyone that he was the one who defeated all the hidden bosses. Imagining how his life would be ruined in an instant and how he would be expelled from the clan immediately, Chi-guk panics. He thinks that if he were stronger than Woojin, everything would be resolved, but for that, he would need his clan leader's secret technique, the Galactic Meteor Spear. Thus, he decides to continue cooperating with Woojin, but that also means continuing to endure Woojin's terrible cooking, without being able to speak the truth. Suddenly, Woojin and Baek, who were leading the way, stop walking, prompting Chi-guk to ask if something is wrong. Baek is also unaware of the situation, saying that Woojin just stopped abruptly, while Woojin silently observes some rocks. On those rocks, his system displays a warning indicating that the dungeon is just ahead. Woojin assumes that the boss's location is recorded in the dungeon log and concludes that the entrance must be within the rocks. He notices that the entrance is covered by a magical barrier, his first time encountering one. Fascinated, Woojin remarks that although the nature of the barrier is different, it is similar to illusions and formations. He considers using brute force to break through the barrier, but there is a risk of missing the boss encounter. Now determined, he decides to analyze the barrier first, confirming his suspicion that barriers have a thin structure. He states that it is as complex as a formation but more refined. With surgical precision, he pinches part of the barrier between his fingers, commenting that a single flaw could easily bring the whole thing down. And as soon as Woojin reveals the entrance to the dungeon, everyone is astonished. Chi-guk is shocked, believing that the portal appeared out of nowhere. He reflects that simply standing still couldn't have been the trigger to unlock it. Woojin rushes in, entering the portal, while the others shout for him to wait, as they have no idea what could be on the other side. Chi-guk and Baek run to follow Woojin, but the moment they attempt to pass through the portal, they are forcefully pushed back. A notification appears, revealing that the number of people allowed in the dungeon has already been exceeded. Chi-guk wonders who else could have entered, until he realizes that only Woojin has gone in. Inside the dungeon, Woojin is fascinated by the environment. He notices that despite being unmistakably underwater, he can breathe normally, and he remarks that moving here feels the same as moving on land. Woojin realizes that this is his first time seeing the ocean, as in his past life, he had only ever been in the mountains. Observing his surroundings, seeing the countless fish and marine creatures, Woojin remarked that it was like a painting, mysterious and beautiful. He wondered where Baek and Chi-guk were, as they had not yet entered. The spirit girl suggested that they might be tired since they had mentioned it before. Woojin remembered that it had only been 2 days since the last dungeon, so they were probably exhausted. To make up for it, he planned to do his best with his next dish. The spirit girl was fascinated by the underwater scenery, saying that the landscape and fish were extraordinary. Woojin found scorpius seaweed, which could be used as armor, and arachnia shells, which granted temporary fire resistance. Surprised, Woojin noted that there was an abundance of seafood that could be used as ingredients, but there was no sign of his target, the limitless fisher. Afterward, Woojin used a spell that allowed him to see miles ahead, and soon he located his target. Woojin stated that within 10 miles he could sense a familiar energy, so he decided to head in that direction. But suddenly, a figure appeared, attacking Woojin directly and demanding to know who he was. Observing the man's movements, Woojin noted that he was able to conceal himself without using advanced techniques, which made him extremely skilled. Woojin hesitated to recognize another hunter, but soon thought of Jo Seong-jun, who appeared determined and ready to act. Shocked, Seong-jun questioned what Woojin was doing there, while Woojin apologized for startling him, explaining that he had lost his way. Seong-jun was incredulous at the idea that someone could get lost in a hidden dungeon, especially someone like Woojin. Thus, he concluded that Woojin was also searching for the Jewel of the Sea, just like him. Seong explained that to break the scroll he had stolen from the auction, he needed the Jewel of the Sea. Earlier, he had reflected that to use the Jewel of the Sea without side effects, he would need to create a spirit stone, and was preparing to consume something. Seong had even used an artifact to change his appearance, but had not expected to run into Woojin there. He then concluded that it was better to meet Woojin like this rather than as Seong-jun, and remarked that it was unfortunate that this young man had lost his way. Seong-jun was trying his best to remain calm, as he couldn't let Woojin escape like last time in the Slime King's dungeon. He recalled that the Limitless Fisher roamed an area of 500 meters as its territory, so encountering it was inevitable. The sect known as Eclipse had already come searching for the Limitless Fisher, but had failed to get too close to its domain. Seong-jun noted that the dungeon remained untouched, so he concluded that Eclipse must have perished there. He was worried about Woojin, as with his abilities, he could easily capture the Limitless Fisher. Therefore, he wondered how he could lure the Limitless Fisher, and at that moment, Woojin said he would continue on his way. They parted ways, and Seong-jun noticed that Woojin was heading directly into the Limitless Fisher's territory, exclaiming that things were turning out easier than expected. Seong affirmed that Woojin would encounter the fisher soon, but suddenly, a warning appeared, stating that someone had entered the fish's territory. Woojin sensed an aura that rivaled that of a divine creature. He decided to observe, thinking it might be interesting, but then, the same warning appeared for him. Before he could react, Woojin found himself face to face with the Limitless Fisher, a B-rank boss. Woojin was utterly shocked, having never seen a fish of that size before, and remarked that it truly lived up to its name. He noticed pieces of clothing caught in the fish's teeth, leading him to assume that those who had been there before had fought the fish and lost. The spirit girl was excited at the sight of the fish's spines, saying that they were a true delicacy. Woojin commented that he had thought the spirit girl was more reserved, but she declared that she loved seafood. After that, Woojin asked what kinds of dishes she liked, and she quickly responded that she would enjoy anything he made. Undecided on his next dish, Woojin said that sushi or sashimi would work well, but he couldn't forget about steamed dishes either. Suddenly, the massive fish became enraged and charged to attack. Woojin felt an astonishing aura but dodged effortlessly. He reflected that the aura was weaker compared to others from his past encounters, but he could sense the same corrupted energy from the auction. Then Woojin realized that the aura only came from the fish's mouth. He concluded that members of Eclipse had been devoured by it. Woojin understood that not even Chaiyan, a high-level hunter, knew about them. They had hidden their identities while killing for power. The fish fired lightning from its mouth while Woojin, furious, condemned the cult as disgusting and lamented that its victims would never get to taste good food again. While dodging the attacks, Woojin thinks that he underestimated them at the auction, and if he encounters them again in the future, he will show no mercy. Then suddenly, Woojin counterattacks using his modified spiral spear along with Celestial Net, slicing the fish into several pieces. Afterward, he realizes that the power of Celestial Net was weaker than he expected, so he decides that he will refine it in the future. Just when they thought everything was fine, a massive earthquake begins. Woojin panics, saying that earthquakes usually don't happen after defeating a dungeon boss. He quickly begins preparing a large-scale spell, generating waves throughout the area. The spirit girl is completely confused by the situation, while Woojin observes that the fish's energy is dissipating, preventing the earthquake from stopping. After defeating the monster, Woojin examines the item left behind and reflects that this is a natural occurrence in this world. But when monsters turn into items, he usually doesn't sense this kind of energy, leading him to suspect that something is interfering. However, Woojin doesn't know who or what is behind it. At that moment, Woojin grows curious about his new item transformation ability and decides to test it immediately. But before he can, the system informs him that a request for dialogue has been received. As soon as Woojin accepts it, a white portal appears before him. The spirit girl is shocked by its sudden appearance, saying that she has never seen anything like it in her entire life. The system states that only authorized individuals can enter the portal, and that once they do, the fish's core will be consumed. Woojin notices that the ominous energy vanishes the moment the portal appears, while the spirit girl warns him that he shouldn't enter, as she has no knowledge of what it could be. She adds that the unknown is the most dangerous element in a dungeon, but Woojin ignores her and declares that he will go in. However, just as Woojin is about to enter, the spirit girl is forcefully repelled from the portal. Woojin then tells her to wait, as he already knew that only authorized individuals could enter.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.